At my wedding reception, my mother-in-law, Diane, took the microphone and announced, "I cancelled your honeymoon. My son should spend that money on me." I laughed at first, thinking it was a joke, but then I checked my bank account and saw it was empty. My husband's next words made her regret everything. I knew Diane didn't like me, but I never thought she'd ruin my marriage before it even started. It was my wedding day, one of the happiest days of my life, until she grabbed the mic and made an announcement that shocked everyone. I still remember her smirk, like she enjoyed causing trouble. She tapped the mic, got everyone's attention, and said in a smug tone, "I have a surprise for the bride and groom. I cancelled their honeymoon because my son deserves better. Why waste money on a trip when he has responsibilities? That money should go to family, to me." The room went silent. I laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke, but she kept talking. She looked right at me, her smile growing wider. I felt sick. I glanced at my husband, Jake, expecting him to be as shocked as I was, but he just stared at his mother, his jaw tight and his hands gripping the table. I knew then this wasn't a joke. My heart raced. I grabbed my phone under the table and checked my bank account. My hands shook as I logged in. The honeymoon fund was gone, every single dollar. The money we saved, the wedding gifts, all of it was gone. My vision blurred, and my hands turned cold. I whispered to Jake, "Tell me this isn't real." He checked his account and said, "My account is empty too." Diane stood there, waiting for applause like she'd done something great. I wanted to scream or throw my drink at her, but before I could react, Jake stood up. What he said next made Diane regret everything. I felt the blood drain from my face, my hands were icy, and my stomach twisted. Our honeymoon fund, thousands of dollars, was gone. Jake gripped his phone so hard I thought it might break. His face was unreadable, but his silence sent chills down my spine. Diane stood there, basking in the attention. She looked proud of herself. Then Jake stood up, and the way he looked at her, I'd never seen him like that before. His jaw was clenched, and his expression was sharp. "Mom," he said calmly, "what did you do?" Diane rolled her eyes. "Stop being dramatic. I moved the money where it belongs. You're married now. It's time to grow up and take care of your family, me." She smiled like she expected him to thank her. Jake took a deep breath, his hands shaking. "Where's the money, Mom?" I already knew the answer. She sighed and said loudly, "I put it in my account. I needed it for important things." The nerve of her. Guests started whispering. Some gasped. My friends looked at me, concerned. My maid of honor, Sarah, was in shock. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. "You stole our honeymoon money," I said, my voice shaking. Diane laughed. "Stole? Don't be dramatic. You're married now. That money should go to your husband's responsibilities, like supporting his mother. I raised him. I deserve it." I was so angry I could barely breathe. Jake, however, stayed calm. He sat down, leaned forward, and said, "Mom, tell me exactly what you spent our money on." Diane smiled like she'd won. "Well, I paid off some credit card bills, put a deposit on a new car, that luxury SUV I've wanted, and booked myself a cruise. I even got the penthouse suite." She said it so casually, like stealing our honeymoon was no big deal. Jake exhaled and smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that meant trouble. "That's great, Mom, really great." Diane hesitated. "What do you mean?" Jake leaned forward. "It's great you spent money that wasn't yours, because now you've committed fraud." He pulled out his phone and called the bank. "Hi, I'd like to report fraudulent activity on my account." Diane's smirk disappeared. "Jake, what are you doing?" Jake ignored her. "Yes, I'd like to dispute unauthorized transfers. I know who did it, my mother. Here's her name and account number." Diane jumped up. "Jake, stop, you can't do this." "Oh, I can," Jake said, still smiling. "You're not on my account, Mom. You stole my money, and banks don't like fraud." Diane's face turned red. Guests were staring, some even recording. Jake added, "I'll also call the cruise line. You booked that trip with stolen money." Diane gasped. "Jake, I'm your mother, you wouldn't." "I would," Jake said. The room was silent. Diane looked around, realizing no one was on her side. She'd completely screwed herself. Jake turned to me, took my hand, and smiled. Then he looked back at Diane. "By the way, Mom, remember that prenup you told me not to sign? The one you called a waste of time?" Diane froze. "What about it?" Jake grinned. "I signed it. One of the conditions is that our accounts stay separate. So, you didn't just steal from me, you stole from my wife." Diane's face went pale. She looked around, panicking. "Jake, sweetheart, let's not overreact. But Jake was done. He put the bank rep on speaker. Sir, we've flagged the unauthorized transfers. We'll reverse the charges and notify authorities. Legal action may be taken. Diane screamed. No, Jake, fix this. Jake just smiled. You did this to yourself, Mom. I'll make sure you don't get arrested, yet, Jake said with a smirk. But the money? That's gone. You won't see a single cent of it. I watched as Diane's face turned red with anger, but what she did next shocked everyone. With a crazy look in her eyes, she turned to me and yelled, "This is your fault. You turned my son against me. He would never do this before you came along." I stayed calm and said, "I didn't make you steal from us. You did that on your own." Diane looked around the room, hoping someone would support her, but everyone just stared at her in disgust. Then, suddenly, she smiled, a creepy, slow smile. "Fine," she said sweetly, "if I can't have the money, neither can you." Before I could stop her, she grabbed her phone and started typing quickly. I stepped closer, my heart racing. "What are you doing?" Diane grinned. "Just making a phone call," she said. "I might not have access to your bank accounts anymore, but I still have tricks." She called the bank and said in a fake sweet voice, "Hi, this is Diane. I need to report a stolen credit card." My stomach sank. I knew what she was doing. She was trying to freeze our accounts by lying about fraud. That would stop us from getting our honeymoon money back. I shouted, "You psycho!" But Jake was faster. He grabbed the phone and put it on speaker. The bank rep said, "Ma'am, you're reporting a stolen card. Can you confirm the account holder's name?" Diane hesitated. She looked at me, then at Jake. Jake raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead, Mom, tell them whose account you're reporting." Diane swallowed hard. It's my son's account." The bank rep cut her off. "Ma'am, unless you're the account holder, you can't report fraud. False reports can lead to legal consequences." Diane's face fell. She looked around the room, realizing she'd made things worse. Jake just laughed, a slow, proud laugh. "Oh, Mom," he said, shaking his head, "you just can't help yourself, can you?" Diane's face turned red. She was shaking. Before she could say anything, her phone buzzed. She looked at it and went pale. Jake smirked. "That the bank?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to, because a family friend, who happened to be a lawyer, stood up and said, "Diane, you know I'm a lawyer, right? What you just did was attempted fraud. You did it in front of 50 people. People started whispering. Some nodded in agreement. Diane stepped back, panicking. I wasn't." The lawyer cut her off. "Save it. You might want to fix this before it gets worse." Diane turned to Jake, pleading, "Jake, you're not really going to let them do this to me, are you?" Jake looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. "You did this to yourself." Diane cried, "Jake, please." But Jake just shrugged. "Enjoy your new vacation, Mom. It might not be a cruise, but jail cells have a nice view." Diane's face crumpled. She finally realized she had lost. She stood there, frozen. Her face was pale, and her hands were shaking. She had lost control, but she wasn't done. "Oh, come on," she said, forcing a laugh. "This is ridiculous. Are you really going to ruin your wedding day over a little misunderstanding?" I'd had enough. I stepped forward and said, "A misunderstanding? You stole our honeymoon money, spent it on yourself, and then tried to commit fraud in front of everyone. That's not a misunderstanding, that's a crime." Diane's fake smile twitched. I wasn't finished. "You act like we owe you something, like your son's money is yours. But guess what, Diane? It's not." Some guests clapped. Diane glared at them, but she wasn't just losing control of the night, she was losing her son. Jake said, "Mom, it's time I tell you something I've been holding back. I've been done with you for a long time. I only stayed in touch because I thought you could change. But you can't. After tonight, I'm cutting you off." Diane's eyes widened. "You don't mean that." Jake said firmly, "I do." Diane gasped like she'd been slapped. The room was silent. Jake took my hand, kissed it, and said to Diane, "You took our money, now I'm taking something from you." Diane asked, "What?" "You don't have a son anymore." People gasped. Diane shook. "You don't mean that," she whispered. Jake didn't back down. "I do. No calls, no visits, no texts. If you try to contact me or my wife, I'll get a restraining order." Diane panicked. "No, Jake, you can't do this. I'm your mother, I raised you." Jake said coldly, "And you just showed me what kind of mother you are." Diane lost it. She screamed, a loud, angry scream, and stomped her foot like a child throwing a tantrum. "You ungrateful." Jake grabbed my hand and said, "Come on, let's enjoy the rest of our wedding." We walked away, leaving Diane humiliated and alone. The next day, the bank reversed the transactions. Every dollar Diane stole was returned to us. Her car deposit was cancelled, her cruise was gone, and her accounts were frozen. The bank flagged her for fraud, and she couldn't touch her money for weeks. The police even warned her that further theft would lead to charges. She became an outcast. Friends and family cut her off. Even some relatives disowned her. But the final blow? 3 months later, Jake and I went on our honeymoon, a first-class trip to Greece, paid for by wedding guests who hated Diane so much they sent us extra money just to spite her. We posted photos, and Diane saw every one. According to Jake's cousin, she cried for weeks. Diane lost everything, her son, her reputation, and her control, and she did it to herself. Jake and I, on the other hand, are happier than ever. We're building a life free from her toxicity, and we have no regrets, because the best revenge is living well. And Diane? She'll have to live with the consequences of her actions, forever.
The numbers jumped out at me like accusatory fingers from my laptop screen. $300,000. That's how much money had vanished from the Research Foundation's accounts over the past year. I rubbed my tired eyes, double-checking the spreadsheet I'd been analyzing for the past 6 hours. The trail led straight to my mother. "My name is Reagan, and I've spent my entire life being the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who follows the rules." While my stepsister Annabelle dazzled at charity galas and social events, I buried myself in research papers and data analysis. It wasn't that I minded. I loved my work. But tonight, everything changed. "Still here?" Jasper's voice made me jump. He leaned against my office doorframe, his coffee mug steaming in the dim light. "It's almost midnight, Reagan. Whatever you're working on can wait until morning." I shook my head, my fingers trembling as I turned the laptop toward him. "Look at this. The Foundation's quarterly reports don't match the bank statements. Someone's been siphoning money from the research grants." Jasper set his coffee down and leaned over my shoulder, his brow furrowing as he scanned the numbers. "Are you sure about this? The signatures, the approval stamps, they all lead back to the Foundation's board treasurer." My voice cracked. My mother. The same mother who'd spent 20 years reminding me I wasn't as naturally gifted as Annabelle. The same woman who'd turned every one of my academic achievements into a conversation about my stepsister's latest modeling campaign or charity event. My phone buzzed, speaking of the devil. A text from Annabelle. "Mom's going crazy planning next month's gala. Says you have to come this time. No excuses." Jasper squeezed my shoulder. "What are you going to do?" I closed my laptop, my decision crystallizing. "I'm going to that gala, but not for the reasons they think." The next morning, I arrived at the Foundation's offices earlier than usual. My mother's assistant, Sarah, was already at her desk, organizing the day's schedule. "Reagan, what brings you to the administrative floor?" Sarah's smile was genuine. She'd always been kind to me. "Just needed to drop off some research proposals," I lied smoothly. "Is my mother in?" "She's meeting with Trevor, Annabelle's fiancé. Something about the gala sponsorships." Perfect. I slipped into my mother's empty office, my heart pounding as I connected my USB drive to her computer. The encryption software I'd installed would give me remote access to her files. "What exactly are you looking for?" Jasper asked later that afternoon, as we combed through the downloaded data. "Proof, transactions, anything that shows—" I stopped, staring at a new email thread. "Here, look at this correspondence with Trevor's investment firm. They're using the gala to launder money through fake charitable donations." Jasper whistled low. "Your mother and future brother-in-law are quite the team." While Annabelle plays the perfect socialite daughter, completely unaware she's being used as their cover. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. My phone rang. My mother this time. I answered, keeping my voice steady. "Darling, I need you at the dress fitting tomorrow. Annabelle's chosen the most stunning gown for the gala, and we simply must find you something appropriate." I could hear the implied criticism, appropriate meaning understated, forgettable, nothing that would overshadow her golden child. "Of course, Mother. I wouldn't miss it." After hanging up, I turned to Jasper. I've spent my whole life being the good daughter, the quiet one, the one who never caused trouble. But they crossed a line. This money was meant for medical research, for helping people. What's your plan? I pulled up the gala guest list on my screen. Board members, donors, press. The perfect audience, don't you think? Mother always taught us that presentation is everything. Jasper's eyes widened as he realized what I was suggesting. Reagan, this could destroy your family. I thought about the patients waiting for the research grants that never came, about the scientists whose projects were shelved because the funding mysteriously dried up. I thought about years of being made to feel less than, of watching my mother's casual corruption hiding behind Annabelle's perfect smile. No, I said, my voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. This will free my family. They just don't know it yet. I started gathering the evidence into a presentation, my hands steady for the first time in days. The gala was in 3 weeks, just enough time to ensure every detail was perfect. Mother always said I had a talent for detailed analysis. Time to show her just how right she was. These donation records don't make any sense, Jasper said, spreading printouts across my desk. Look at this one. $500,000 from a company that doesn't even exist. I leaned closer, scanning the documents. The past week had been a blur of late nights and coffee-fueled investigation sessions. Shell companies. They're all shell companies, aren't they? Your mother's clever. I'll give her that. Jasper pulled up another spreadsheet. But she made one mistake. She got greedy. A knock at my office door made us both jump. Annabelle stood there, looking perfectly put together as always in her designer outfit. Surprise! I brought lunch. I scrambled to close the laptop while Jasper casually swept the papers into a folder. Annabelle set down a paper bag from my favorite deli, her expression curious. Am I interrupting something? You two look like teenagers caught making out behind the bleachers. Just boring research stuff, I said quickly. What brings you here? Can't a sister bring lunch without an ulterior motive? She perched on the edge of my desk, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming against the wood. Although, Mother's driving me crazy with this gala planning. I could use a break. Jasper cleared his throat. I should get back to my lab. After he left, Annabelle's carefully maintained smile faltered. Trevor's been acting weird lately. Secretive. Always on the phone with Mother. My heart skipped a beat. Oh? I mean, I know they're working on gala stuff, but... She shrugged, trying to look nonchalant. Sometimes I feel like I'm just a prop in their perfect little world. For the first time, I really looked at my stepsister. Behind the flawless makeup and practiced smile, I saw something familiar, the same trapped feeling I'd been fighting all these years. Annabelle, I started, but my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Your mother's looking for the Foundation's audit reports. Says you have them? I should go. Annabelle stood up. Photo shoot for the gala invitations. Mother insists on capturing the perfect family moment. She rolled her eyes. After she left, I called Jasper. We need to move faster. Mother's looking for the audit reports. Already on it. Meet me at the coffee house in 20 minutes. The cafe was busy enough to mask our conversation. Jasper slid a USB drive across the table. I traced the shell companies. They all lead back to Trevor's investment firm. But here's where it gets interesting. The money's being routed through offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Classic. I took a sip of my Americano. But why? Mother's salary is more than generous. That's not all. Jasper lowered his voice. I found emails between your mother and Trevor discussing something called Project Legacy. They're planning to announce it at the gala. My phone lit up with a text from Mother. Darling, don't forget. Dress fitting tomorrow at 10. And please do something with your hair this time. I ignored it. What's Project Legacy? From what I can piece together, they're planning to restructure the foundation, move all research funding to approved projects only, meaning projects that funnel money back to them. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. They're not just stealing from existing grants, they're setting up a permanent pipeline. Using Annabelle's public image as cover, Jasper added. The perfect charitable face for their scheme. I thought about Annabelle's earlier words, about feeling like a prop. She has no idea, does she? Speaking of no idea, Jasper nodded toward the cafe entrance. Trevor had just walked in with my mother. We ducked behind our menus, but they were too absorbed in their conversation to notice us. They sat at a table near enough that snippets of their discussion drifted over. "The announcement will be perfect," my mother was saying. "Annabelle on stage, presenting our vision for the Foundation's future. And the old guard won't know what hit them," Trevor replied with a smirk. I felt sick. They were going to use Annabelle to announce their own corrupt scheme, making her an unwitting accomplice. Back in my office, I pulled up the gala preparations folder on my laptop. Mother had already scripted everything, the speeches, the photo ops, even the exact moment Annabelle would announce Project Legacy. "We can't let this happen," I told Jasper over the phone that evening. "They're not just stealing money anymore. They're trying to legitimize their corruption. What's our next move?" I stared at the gala invitation on my desk, featuring a photo of Annabelle's smiling face. "We need to talk to Sarah. She handles all the Foundation's correspondence. She must have seen something." "That's risky. She's your mother's right hand." "True." I picked up the invitation. But Sarah's always had a soft spot for me. And more importantly, she believes in what the Foundation is supposed to stand for. "Be careful, Reagan. The closer we get to the gala, the more dangerous this becomes." I thought about Annabelle, about all the researchers counting on these grants, about years of watching my mother's casual corruption destroy everything she touched. Some things are worth the risk. Sarah's hands shook as she handed me the stack of documents. I always knew something wasn't right, but this... She glanced nervously at my mother's empty office across the hall. "If she finds out I showed you these..." "She won't," I assured her, quickly photographing each page with my phone. "You're doing the right thing." "The Foundation Board meeting minutes," Sarah whispered. "Your mother's been doctoring them for months. The real versions are very different from what she's been presenting." A door slammed somewhere down the hall. Sarah jumped, snatching the papers back. "Go, now." I slipped out just as Trevor's voice echoed through the corridor. "Paula, we need to discuss the announcement." I ducked into the stairwell, pressing myself against the wall as their voices drifted down. "Everything's arranged," my mother said. "Once Project Legacy is announced, the board won't have a choice. The press will be there, the major donors. And Annabelle? She'll do exactly what she's told. She always does." Their footsteps faded. I waited until the coast was clear, then rushed to Jasper's lab. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, pulling me inside. "Better." I connected my phone to his computer. Sarah came through. "Look at these meeting minutes. Mother's been systematically misleading the board about where the money's going." Jasper scrolled through the photos. "This is huge, Reagan. With this evidence..." The lab door burst open. Annabelle stood there, mascara streaking her cheeks. "I need to talk to you." Jasper and I exchanged panicked looks. How much had she heard? "Trevor's cheating on me," she blurted out. Not what I was expecting. "What? How do you know?" "I found messages on his phone, but it's worse than that." She collapsed into a chair. "He's been meeting with Mother almost every day, planning something big. Something about the Foundation." I caught Jasper's eye. He nodded slightly. "Annabelle," I said carefully, "what do you know about Project Legacy?" Her perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together. "The new charitable initiative? Mother says I'm announcing it at the gala. Some kind of restructuring to make the Foundation more efficient." She paused. "Why?" "Because it's a lie." The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "The whole thing is a front for embezzlement. Mother and Trevor have been stealing from research grants, and they're planning to use you to make it all look legitimate." Annabelle stared at me, then laughed shakily. "That's ridiculous. Mother would never... I mean, she's always been about appearances, but... Look." I pulled up the evidence on Jasper's computer. "These are the real numbers, the shell companies, the offshore accounts." As Annabelle read, her face went from disbelief to horror to anger. All those times they were planning the gala together, they were planning this? "They're going to have you announce it," Jasper said gently. "Make you the face of their scheme." Annabelle stood up abruptly, pacing the lab. "I always knew Mother was controlling, but this? Using me to steal from sick people?" She whirled to face me. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Would you have believed me? I asked quietly. Over Mother? She stopped pacing. No, probably not. A bitter laugh escaped her. God, I've been so stupid. The perfect daughter doing exactly what she's told. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Your mother's looking for the original meeting minutes. She knows something's wrong. We need to move fast, I told them. Mother suspects something's up. What are you planning to do? Annabelle asked. Expose everything, at the gala. You'll destroy her. She destroyed herself. I hesitated. But I can't do it alone. I need your help. Annabelle was quiet for a long moment, twisting her engagement ring around her finger. Finally, she pulled it off and set it on Jasper's desk with a decisive click. Count me in. Her voice was steel. Nobody uses me as a prop in their corruption scheme. Not even Mother. Jasper cleared his throat. Not to interrupt this touching sister moment, but we have another problem. Look at this email I just found. We crowded around his computer. Mother had sent instructions to the Foundation's IT department to wipe certain servers, scheduled for the day before the gala. She's covering her tracks, I said. Then we better make sure we have everything we need before she does. Annabelle pulled out her phone. I know Mother's passwords, all of them. She made me memorize them in case of emergencies. For the first time since this began, I felt real hope. Together we might actually pull this off. The gala's in 2 weeks, Jasper reminded us. Annabelle's smile was fierce. Perfect. Just enough time to plan our own little announcement. Smile, darling. You look like you're at a funeral. Mother adjusted my dress for the 10th time, as the boutique's seamstress pinned the hem. The gala is a celebration, not a wake, if she only knew. I forced a smile, catching Annabelle's eye in the mirror. My stepsister was perched on a velvet settee, pretending to scroll through her phone while actually recording every word. The press will be there, Mother continued, fussing with my hair. The governor, key donors, everything must be perfect. She turned to Annabelle. Darling, have you memorized your speech for the Project Legacy announcement? Every word, Mother. Annabelle's voice was honey-sweet, though I was thinking of adding my own personal touch. Mother's smile tightened. Stick to the script, dear. This isn't the time for improvisation. The seamstress finished her work, and Mother swept out to take a call, leaving Annabelle and me alone in the fitting room. Did you get that? I whispered. Annabelle played back the recording. Mother's voice rang clear. The governor's office has already approved the restructuring. Once the announcement is made, it's a done deal. Another piece of evidence. I stepped down from the platform, careful of the pins. How are things with Trevor? He's suspicious, keeps asking if I've talked to you lately. She lowered her voice. Last night, I found him going through my laptop. Did he find anything? Please. She rolled her eyes. I learned from the best. Mother taught me everything about keeping secrets. Her smile turned bitter. Ironic, isn't it? The boutique door chimed. Jasper walked in, pretending to be lost. Sir, this is a private fitting, the saleswoman began. Oh, Jasper, Annabelle called out. Right on time to help with color choices. Mother returned just then, her face darkening at the sight of him. What is he doing here? I invited him, Annabelle said smoothly. We need a man's opinion, don't we? And since Trevor's so busy with foundation work? Mother's expression shifted from annoyance to satisfaction. Of course, dear, though perhaps someone more qualified. Actually, Jasper interrupted, I came to discuss the latest grant applications with Reagan. Time-sensitive matters. Work, 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 Mother sighed. Reagan, dear, you really must learn to separate your professional and personal life. The gala is in 10 days, I finished. I know, Mother. Everything will be perfect. After Mother left to berate the saleswoman about something, Jasper pulled out his phone. Sarah came through again. Look what she found in the Foundation's archived emails. I looked at the screen, my breath catching. There it was, the original proposal for Project Legacy, dated 2 years ago. But instead of a charitable initiative, it outlined a complex scheme to redirect research funds through private investments. Mother's been planning this for years, Annabelle whispered, reading over my shoulder. There's more, Jasper said. Trevor's firm isn't just managing the money, they're creating fake research projects to justify the funding transfers. The boutique door chimed again. Trevor walked in. Hide the phone, I hissed. Annabelle immediately draped herself on Trevor's arm, playing the adoring fiancé. Darling, what a surprise. We were just discussing the gala. Were you? Trevor's eyes flickered between us. With him? He nodded toward Jasper. Fashion emergency, Jasper said dryly. Apparently, I have an eye for color. Annabelle, Trevor said, his voice tight. A word? They stepped aside, but not far enough that we couldn't hear. Your mother's worried, Trevor muttered. Says you've been distant, asking strange questions about the foundation. I'm just trying to understand my role better, Annabelle replied, for the announcement. Stick to the script. The same words Mother had used. There's too much at stake. After they left, Jasper turned to me. They're getting nervous. Good. I checked my phone. A new message from Sarah. Your mother just called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow. Something about security concerns. She's moving faster than we expected, Jasper said. We need to be ready. I looked at my reflection in the fitting room mirror. The perfect daughter in the perfect dress for the perfect gala. Mother had spent years crafting this image, using both Annabelle and me as pieces in her elaborate game. Reagan? Jasper touched my arm. Are you sure about this? Once we do this, there's no going back. I'm sure. I smoothed down the dress. Mother always taught us that presentation is everything. Time to show her just how well we learned that lesson. The board meeting tomorrow, he said. If she's planning what I think she is, then we'll be ready. I picked up my phone to text Annabelle. Tell Trevor you're spending the night reviewing your speech. Meet us at my place at 8. The response came immediately. I'll bring wine. We're going to need it. The pieces were in place. Now we just had to survive the next 10 days. The board meeting was a disaster, Sarah whispered into her phone. I had her on speaker as Annabelle, Jasper, and I huddled around my kitchen table. Your mother's convinced there's a leak. She's ordered a complete system lockdown. Can you still access the files? I asked, watching Jasper type frantically on his laptop. No, but... Sarah lowered her voice further. I made copies, everything. I'll leave them in the usual place. After hanging up, Annabelle poured more wine into our glasses. Mother called me 3 times today. She wants me to move the Project Legacy announcement to the beginning of the gala, instead of after dinner. She's rushing it, Jasper said, still typing, trying to get ahead of any potential exposure. My phone buzzed. Trevor calling. I showed the screen to Annabelle. Don't answer, she said. He's been watching me like a hawk. Yesterday, he followed me to the grocery store. We need to move faster. I pulled up our evidence folder. Sarah's copies will be the final piece. Once we have those... A knock at my door made us all freeze. Through the peephole, I saw Mother standing there, perfectly coiffed, despite the late hour. Places, everyone, I whispered. Jasper grabbed his laptop and slipped into my bedroom, while Annabelle quickly hid the documents under my couch cushions. I opened the door. Mother, it's almost midnight. Can't a mother check on her daughters? She swept in, taking in the wine glasses and Annabelle's presence with sharp eyes. A little late for a social call, isn't it? Wedding jitters, Annabelle said smoothly. I needed sister time. Mother's smile didn't reach her eyes. How sweet, though I hope these sisterly bonding sessions aren't distracting you from your speech preparation. Actually, I interjected, I've been helping her practice. Want to hear it? You? Mother's laugh was like breaking glass. Darling, no offense, but public speaking has never been your strong suit. Remember your high school graduation? That awkward valedictorian speech? Annabelle stood up. Mother, stop it. Reagan's been incredibly helpful. Has she? Mother's gaze swept the room. And what else has your sister been helping with? The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Before anyone could respond, a toilet flushed, Jasper's signal that he'd finished wiping his laptop's search history. Mother's eyes narrowed. Do you have company? Just me. Jasper emerged, the picture of casual innocence. Late-night research consultation. You know how it is with grant deadlines. Indeed. Mother's voice could have frozen hell. Reagan, darling, a word in private? She led me to the kitchen, her manicured nails digging into my arm. Whatever you think you're doing, stop it. Now. I don't know what you mean. Don't play dumb. It doesn't suit you. She leaned closer. You've always been the smart one, haven't you? Hidden away in your lab, watching, analyzing. But this time you're out of your depth. Am I? The foundation is my life's work. I won't let anyone destroy that. Not even you. Her smile turned predatory. Did you really think I wouldn't notice the server access logs? The copied files? My heart stopped. Mother. I'm moving the announcement to tomorrow night. She released my arm. A private preview event, just key stakeholders and family. No press, no distractions. That's not the plan, Annabelle said from the doorway. The gala... Plans change, darling. Be ready at 7. Mother headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Reagan, I've suspended your lab's funding. Pending review, of course. We can't be too careful with security concerns. After she left, we all stared at each other in shocked silence. She knows, Jasper said, emerging from the bedroom. She's cutting us off at the knees. Not yet. I pulled out my phone. Sarah, change of plans. We need those files tonight. The security guards. I don't care. Mother's moving everything up. Tomorrow night. Annabelle was already grabbing her coat. I'll create a distraction at the foundation. Say I need to practice in the event space. I'll handle the tech side, Jasper added. If she's locked down the servers, there might still be a backdoor through the backup systems. My phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. Whatever you're planning, don't. Some things are bigger than family. He's right, I said, showing them the message. This is bigger than family. That's exactly why we have to do it. Annabelle grabbed her keys. Meet at the foundation in 30 minutes, back entrance. As they left, I looked at the wine glasses on my table, evidence of our conspiracy. Mother had taught us well, about appearances, about secrets, about power. But she'd forgotten one crucial lesson. The student sometimes surpasses the teacher. The foundation's preview event buzzed with nervous energy. Board members mingled with investors, their champagne glasses clinking like wind chimes before a storm. Mother held court near the podium, resplendent in midnight blue, while Trevor hovered nearby, checking his phone every 30 seconds. Stop fidgeting, Mother hissed as I passed. And for heaven's sake, fix your hair. I touched the USB drive hidden in my clutch, remembering last night's frantic operation. Sarah had come through. The files were devastating. Mother had no idea we'd managed to access them just hours before her system purge. 5 minutes until the announcement, Trevor announced, his voice carrying across the room. Everyone, please take your seats. Annabelle appeared at my elbow, looking stunning in emerald green. Ready? Sarah's in position? Broadcasting everything to the main foundation servers. She squeezed my hand. Once this starts, there's no stopping it. Ladies and gentlemen, Mother took the stage, practically glowing. Thank you all for joining us on such short notice. Tonight marks a new chapter in our foundation's history. I slipped away toward the AV booth while she spoke, my heart thundering. Jasper was already there, pretending to adjust sound levels. Cameras are live, he whispered. Every board member got an anonymous email link. They're all watching the live stream on their phones. And the backup? Running. Even if they cut the power, everything's being recorded to external servers. Mother's voice filled the room. And now, I'm thrilled to introduce my daughter, Annabelle, who will share our vision for Project Legacy. Applause erupted as Annabelle took the stage. She looked perfectly poised, exactly as Mother had trained her to be, but I saw her hands shaking as she gripped the podium. Thank you, Mother. Annabelle's voice was clear and strong. Before I begin, I'd like to share something personal. Mother's smile flickered. This wasn't in the script. All my life I've been the face of this foundation, the perfect daughter, the charitable socialite, the cover story. Annabelle paused. But tonight, I'm choosing to be something else, honest. Trevor started moving toward the stage. I nodded to Jasper, who clicked a button. The screens behind Annabelle lit up with financial records, email chains, offshore account details. Project Legacy isn't about charity, Annabelle continued as gasps filled the room. It's about greed, corruption, stealing from the sick and desperate to line private pockets. That's enough! Mother's voice cracked like a whip. Security! I stepped onto the stage beside my sister. The evidence has already been sent to the FBI, Mother, and the press. Sarah's broadcasting this live to every major news outlet. The room erupted in chaos. Board members jumped to their feet, phones recording everything. Trevor tried to reach the AV booth, but Jasper had locked the door. You ungrateful little... Mother lunged for the podium, but Annabelle stood her ground. $300,000 from the Cancer Research Fund, Annabelle read from the screen. $500,000 from pediatric studies, all funneled through Trevor's investment firm into private accounts. You have no idea what you're doing, Mother snarled. The people we answer to? Will all be investigated, I finished. Every shell company, every fake grant, every donor who helped you steal from sick children. Trevor finally reached the stage. Paula, we need to leave. Now. But Mother wasn't finished. She grabbed the microphone. Everything I did was for this foundation, for our family's legacy. No, Annabelle's voice cut through the chaos. It was for you, always for you, using me as your perfect distraction while you robbed the people we promised to help. Security guards appeared at the doors, but they weren't Mother's. Sarah had called in the real police. Paula Horton? An officer approached the stage. We need you to come with us. The look Mother gave me could have melted steel. I gave you everything, both of you. This is how you repay me? You gave us lessons in manipulation and lies, I said. Consider this our final exam. As they led Mother and Trevor away, the board members crowded around us, demanding explanations. Phones kept recording, questions flew from all directions. Through it all, Annabelle held my hand, both of us standing tall. Miss Horton? A reporter had somehow gotten in. What happens to the foundation now? I looked at Annabelle, who nodded. We start over, transparently, honestly, the way it always should have been. And Project Legacy, someone called out, will be exactly what it claims to be, Annabelle answered. A fresh start, a true legacy of helping others, not helping ourselves. As the chaos continued around us, Jasper appeared at my side. You did it. We did it, I corrected, watching Mother's perfect world crumble. All of us. The truth was out. The storm had broken. And somehow, standing in the wreckage of our mother's empire, I felt lighter than I had in years. The police station buzzed with activity as Mother sat across from us, her designer outfit wrinkled from hours in holding. Her makeup had smeared, but her eyes remained sharp as razors. You've made your point, she said coldly. Now drop the charges. Annabelle laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Drop the charges. The FBI has already seized the foundation's accounts. Trevor's singing like a bird to save himself. It's over, Mother. Over? Mother leaned forward. Do you have any idea how many lives you've ruined? The connections you've severed? The donors? The donors are cooperating with the investigation, I cut in. Turns out nobody wants to be connected to a charity fraud scandal. The detective entered, placing a thick file on the table. Mrs. Horton, we've found additional accounts in the Cayman Islands. Care to explain? Mother's lawyer touched her arm. My client exercises her right to remain silent. That's a first, Annabelle muttered. We watched as Mother was led back to her cell. Through the window, I could see reporters camped outside the station, hungry for updates on the scandal that had rocked the city's philanthropic community. Miss Horton? The detective addressed me. We'll need your statement about when you first discovered the discrepancies. For the next 2 hours, I walked them through everything. The missing research funds, the shell companies, the fake grants. Annabelle added her own testimony about Trevor's involvement and the planned announcement. Your mother's looking at serious time, the detective said finally. Both of them are. The amount of money involved. We're talking federal charges. Jasper was waiting outside the interview room. The board's called an emergency meeting. They want you both there. Now? Annabelle checked her phone. It's almost midnight. Damage control doesn't sleep. The foundation's offices were eerily quiet as we rode the elevator to the boardroom. Sarah met us at the door, her eyes red from crying. "They've been in there for hours," she whispered, "trying to save what's left." Inside, the board members looked shell-shocked. The chairman, an elderly man who'd known our father, spoke first. "Ladies, please sit down." He shuffled some papers. "We've spent the evening reviewing the extent of the situation. The foundation's reputation is salvageable," I interrupted, "if we act fast and with complete transparency." "The press is calling it the legacy scandal," another board member said. "Our donors are fleeing." Annabelle straightened in her chair. "Then let me talk to them. I've been the face of this foundation for years. Let me tell them the truth, that we discovered the corruption and chose to expose it ourselves. It's not that simple. Actually, it is." I pulled out my laptop. "I've drafted a complete restructuring plan, new oversight measures, transparent accounting, direct links between donors and the research they fund." The board members exchanged looks. "We need new leadership," the chairman said slowly. "Someone who understands both the scientific and public aspects of our mission." I felt Annabelle squeeze my hand under the table. "We'd like to offer you both positions," he continued. "Reagan as Executive Director of Research, Annabelle as Director of Public Relations and Donor Relations." "Together?" Annabelle asked. "Together. Your actions, while shocking, showed integrity, something this foundation desperately needs to rebuild." As we left the building hours later, the sky was starting to lighten. Reporters swarmed us immediately. "Miss Horton, how does it feel to expose your own mother's corruption? What's next for the foundation?" Annabelle stepped forward, every inch the polished spokesperson. "The foundation is entering a new era of transparency and genuine charitable work. My sister and I—" "Look!" someone shouted. Through the media crowd, we saw Trevor being led out of the federal building in handcuffs. His expensive suit was rumpled, his face ashen. "Miss Sanderson, do you have any comment about your ex-fiancé's arrest?" Annabelle's composure cracked slightly. I stepped up beside her. "The foundation's future isn't about the past," I said firmly. "It's about the researchers working to save lives, the patients waiting for breakthroughs, and the donors who genuinely want to help. That's the only story that matters now." Jasper appeared with his car, offering escape from the media frenzy. As we drove away, Annabelle finally broke down. "I loved him," she whispered, "or thought I did. How did we not see who they really were?" "We saw what they wanted us to see," I replied, "just like everyone else." "The board meeting tomorrow." "Today," Jasper corrected, glancing at the dawn breaking over the city. "Today," Annabelle agreed. "We start fixing everything they broke." I thought about Mother sitting in her cell, still believing she was right. About all the years she'd spent teaching us to maintain appearances while hiding ugly truths. "We're not fixing their foundation," I said. "We're building our own, the right way this time." The sun rose higher, painting the sky in shades of promise. Somewhere in the city, Mother's empire was crumbling. But from its ashes, something honest could finally grow. "Guilty on all counts," the judge's voice echoed through the courtroom. Mother stood perfectly straight, her designer suit a stark contrast to the handcuffs at her wrists. She didn't look at us as they led her away. Trevor had already taken his plea deal, trading information for a lighter sentence. But Mother had insisted on fighting, convinced until the end that she could talk her way out of anything. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us again. This time I was ready. "The verdict sends a clear message," I said into the forest of microphones. "No one is above accountability, not even family." "Miss Horton, the Foundation's new pediatric research initiative has already raised millions. Was this your response to your mother's crimes?" Annabelle stepped forward. "Every dollar stolen from sick children will be repaid threefold. That's our promise." Back at the Foundation, Sarah had arranged a staff meeting. The boardroom was packed. Researchers, administrators, grant coordinators, all waiting to hear what came next. "The trial's over," I announced. "Now we focus on what matters, the work." "Dr. Reynolds' cancer study needs additional funding," someone called out. "Approved," Annabelle said, checking her tablet. along with the stem cell research team and the rare disease initiative. But the budget is solid, I assured them. Every donation is now tracked in real time on our public database. Donors can see exactly where their money goes, down to the last cent. After the meeting, Jasper found me in my office. "You haven't opened it yet." He nodded at the envelope on my desk, Mother's last attempt to communicate before sentencing. "Nothing she says can change anything." "Maybe not, but you might need to hear it anyway." I picked up the letter, Mother's precise handwriting stark against the prison stationery. "Reagan, you think you've won? Perhaps you have, but everything I did was to secure our position, our influence. You'll understand someday when the weight of legacy bears down on you. Power requires sacrifice. Remember that. Mother." Annabelle appeared in the doorway as I crumpled the letter. Still trying to justify herself? Still trying to teach her lessons? I tossed the paper into the shredder. Speaking of which, the university called. They want us to give a guest lecture on ethical leadership. "Us?" Annabelle laughed. "I'm not exactly professor material." "No, you're better. You're living proof that people can choose integrity over advantage." The intercom buzzed. Sarah's voice carried through. "The governor's here for the tour." We walked together through the foundation's halls, now bright with transparency, both literal and figurative. Glass walls had replaced solid ones, letting sunlight and scrutiny reach every corner. The governor waited in the lobby, surrounded by aides. "Impressive changes," he said, gesturing at the digital displays showing real-time grant allocations and research progress. "Very modern." "Would you like to meet some of our researchers?" I offered. "Dr. Reynolds is about to test a promising new treatment protocol." "Actually," he cleared his throat, "I was hoping to discuss the Foundation's political connections. Your mother had certain arrangements." "Those arrangements died with the old regime," Annabelle cut in smoothly. "But we'd love to show you how your state's medical research grants are advancing critical studies." I hid my smile. Mother had taught us well about handling powerful people, just not the way she'd intended. Later, in the lab, Jasper showed us the latest results from the pediatric trials. "This could change everything," he said, pointing to the data. "With the new funding, we might have a breakthrough within months." Mother would have buried this, I realized. It didn't fit her profit model. "Mother isn't here," Annabelle said firmly. "We are, and we're doing it right." My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Reporter from Times requesting interview. Says it's about Mother's old network starting new foundation across state." I showed the message to Annabelle. "Ready to fight another battle?" "Always," she grinned. "But first, dinner? I'm starving." As we left the building, I caught our reflection in the glass doors. Two sisters, no longer in anyone's shadow. The Foundation's new logo shone above us. Truth heals. "You know what Mother never understood?" Annabelle said as we walked to the car. "Real power isn't about control, it's about choice." "And we choose to help people," I finished. The city lights sparkled around us, each one representing someone whose life our work might touch. Mother's legacy had been built on lies, but ours would be built on something stronger: truth, trust, and the courage to stand up for both. "So," Jasper called from behind us, "about that Times reporter." I exchanged looks with Annabelle. We both smiled. Another battle, another day. But this time we were fighting for something real, and that made all the difference. The phone slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the kitchen counter. My daughter Lucy's soft cries from the nursery barely registered as Layla's words echoed in my head. Bridget changed the name. The sign went up this morning, O'Brien's Family Bakery. I'm Malia, and until 3 months ago I was living my dream as the proud owner of Sweet Dreams Bakery. Now, as I stood in my kitchen with trembling hands, that dream was crumbling like day-old cookies. "Malia, are you there?" Layla's voice crackled through the speaker. I snatched up the phone. "Tell me everything." "She's completely taken over. New menus, new suppliers, even new uniforms. The staff is confused, but she's waving around some paperwork claiming temporary authority while you're on maternity leave." Lucy's cries grew louder. I hurried to her room, cradling the phone between my ear and shoulder as I lifted her from the crib. How did this happen? Kent's mom was supposed to just help manage things temporarily. That's not all, Layla lowered her voice. She's telling customers you've decided to step back permanently to focus on motherhood. My blood boiled. She what? I tried calling you sooner, but she's been monitoring everything. Had to wait until her lunch meeting to sneak away. The doorbell rang, making Lucy startle in my arms. Through the window, I spotted Kent's car in the driveway. He wasn't supposed to be home for hours. Layla, I have to go. Don't let her know you called. I opened the door to find Kent looking worried. Hey, honey, Mom called. Said you might need help with Lucy today? Did she now? I forced a smile, bouncing Lucy gently. Funny she didn't mention anything to me about calling you. Kent stepped inside, kissing my cheek. Well, I had some vacation days saved up anyway. Thought I'd surprise you. Your mother's full of surprises lately. He frowned. What do you mean? I handed him Lucy. Have you driven past the bakery recently? No, why? Because your mother renamed it. My bakery, the one I built from scratch, the one that paid for our wedding. It's now O'Brien's family bakery. Kent's face paled. That's impossible. She's just helping out while you recover. Call her. Ask her yourself. He pulled out his phone, but I stopped him. Actually, wait. I need to see this for myself first. Malia, you're supposed to be resting. I've rested enough. I grabbed my keys. Watch Lucy. I'll be back in an hour. At least let me come with you. No. I softened my tone at his hurt expression. I need to do this alone. Your mother's already convinced half the town I'm too weak to handle both business and motherhood. I won't prove her right by hiding behind you. The drive to downtown felt surreal. 3 months ago, I'd walked out of those doors, 8 months pregnant, but confident I'd left my business in capable hands. Bridget had seemed so supportive then, insisting I take proper maternity leave, promising to keep everything running smoothly. I parked across the street, my heart sinking at the sight of the new sign. The elegant blue and gold lettering I'd chosen was gone, replaced by gaudy Celtic-inspired fonts. Through the window, I could see Bridget behind the counter, wearing a crisp blazer instead of the traditional baker's apron we'd always used. My phone buzzed with a text from Kent. Mom's not answering. Want me to try again? I typed back. No need. I'm looking at her right now. As if sensing my presence, Bridget glanced up. Our eyes met through the window and her smile froze. She quickly turned away, disappearing into the back office. My office. Another text from Kent. Coming to you now. Mom just called. Says there's been a misunderstanding. I smiled grimly, starting my car. A misunderstanding? No, this was a calculated takeover. But what Bridget didn't know was that I'd seen something like this coming long before Lucy was even conceived. She wasn't the first person to assume a young mother couldn't handle business ownership. That's why I'd visited Johnny Bell, my lawyer, 6 months ago. The papers he'd drawn up were safely tucked away in my home office, waiting for exactly this kind of situation. I drove home, my initial shock giving way to cold determination. Bridget thought she was teaching me a lesson about choosing between motherhood and career. Instead, she was about to learn one herself, about underestimating the wrong person. Let her enjoy playing business owner for now. I had a few surprises of my own in store for my dear mother-in-law. The next morning, I pulled my hair into a messy bun, threw on an oversized hoodie I hadn't worn since college, and grabbed my old reading glasses. With Lucy safely at her first daycare trial day, I was ready to do some undercover reconnaissance. Walking into my own bakery as a stranger felt surreal. The warm, homey atmosphere I'd cultivated had been replaced by stark modernism. Gone were the vintage mixing bowls I'd collected from flea markets. Instead, cold stainless steel and pretentious art prints dominated the walls. "Welcome to O'Brien's," chirped a new employee I didn't recognize. Her name tag read, Jessica. "Today's special is our artisanal lavender-infused croissant." I nearly choked. Lavender? In my traditional French croissants? "Actually," I mumbled, disguising my voice slightly, "I heard this place used to make amazing cinnamon rolls?" Jessica's smile faltered. "Oh, those were discontinued. Mrs. O'Brien says they weren't sophisticated enough for our new image. My signature cinnamon rolls, the recipe that put us on the map. Discontinued." I settled into a corner table with a mediocre coffee, watching the morning rush. Regular customers looked confused by the new menu. Several left without ordering. "It's not the same anymore, is it?" a familiar voice whispered. I turned to find Layla pretending to wipe nearby tables. She kept her back to the security cameras Bridget had installed. "The books are worse," she murmured. "I glimpsed them yesterday. She's hemorrhaging money on renovations and fancy ingredients, but customer numbers are dropping daily." "Where's the original financial records?" "Locked in your office." "But—" Layla glanced around before sliding a folded paper into my hoodie pocket. "I made copies of last week's numbers. It's bad, Malia." The back door chimed, and Bridget swept in wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than a month's worth of flower orders. "Jessica, those display cases need to be spotless. We have the food critic from Elite Tastes coming this afternoon." My heart stopped. Elite Tastes was notorious for brutal reviews of traditional bakeries trying to be upscale. One bad write-up could destroy years of goodwill. Bridget spotted Layla. "Don't you have deliveries to prepare?" "Just finished cleaning the tables, Mrs. O'Brien." "Well, the kitchen needs attention. And remember, it's Madame O'Brien now. We're elevating our standards." I buried my face in my coffee cup as Bridget passed my table. Once she disappeared into the office, I slipped into the bathroom and examined Layla's paper. The numbers were worse than I'd imagined. Bridget had drained the emergency fund I'd built up over 5 years, all for her vanity renovations. My phone buzzed. "Kent. Mom's asking about dinner tonight. Says she has exciting news about the bakery." I texted back, "Perfect. I'll be there." Another buzz. "You're plotting something, aren't you?" "Me? Never. Just being a supportive daughter-in-law." I was about to leave when I overheard Jessica at the counter. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Martinez, but we don't do custom birthday cakes anymore." "But Sweet Dreams always made my son's birthday cake," an elderly woman protested. "Every year for 10 years. It's tradition. Madame O'Brien says custom orders aren't cost-effective." Mrs. Martinez, who had been my first ever customer, left in tears. I ducked into the bathroom again, this time to keep from screaming. When I emerged, Bridget was berating Jessica. The proper response was to suggest our premium cake selection. They're 3 times the price of those tacky custom cakes. But she seemed really upset. "That's because she doesn't understand quality. Now I need you to replace all these pastry labels. The font isn't elegant enough." I'd seen enough. On my way out, I passed Maeve, Bridget's daughter, entering the bakery. "Mom, we need to talk about— Oh my God!" She stared at the new decor. "What have you done to this place?" "Darling, perfect timing. Help me choose between these 2 shades of gray for the new uniform colors." "Gray? In a bakery? Mom, this is insane. Malia built this place from nothing, and you're—" "Malia chose to prioritize motherhood," Bridget cut in smoothly. "I'm simply ensuring the business survives her domestic transition." I slipped out before my disguise cracked, but not before hearing Maeve's response. "You know what? I'm having dinner with Kent and Malia tonight. Maybe I'll ask her opinion on all these changes." In my car, I finally looked at the financial records properly. Between the drained accounts, alienated customers, and that pending review, Bridget was driving my life's work straight into the ground. But first, we had a family dinner to attend, and I had a lawyer to call. Johnny's office hadn't changed since my last visit 6 months ago. Same worn leather chairs, same wall of law books, same knowing smile as I settled into the seat across from him. "I was wondering when you'd call," he said, pulling out a familiar manila envelope. "Though I'll admit, I expected it would take your mother-in-law longer to show her true colors." "You knew this would happen?" "Malia, in 15 years of family business law, I've seen this story play out dozens of times. The minute you mentioned your mother-in-law's sudden interest in helping with the bakery, I knew we needed insurance." He spread the documents across his desk. My signature stood out at the bottom of each page, along with the notary's seal. "Tell me again," I said. "What exactly does this protect me from?" "Everything." Johnny tapped the first page. "This establishes that any operational changes require your explicit written consent. The second document creates a trust that legally owns the bakery's assets, with you as the sole trustee. And this, he held up the third paper, is my personal favorite. It voids any contracts or agreements made during your maternity leave without your notarized approval. I leaned forward. Even if she somehow got Kent to sign something? Even then, your husband has no legal authority over the bakery's operations. You made sure of that when you kept the business separate from your marital assets. He paused. Speaking of Kent, how's he handling all this? I sighed, caught in the middle, but his sister Maeve is on my side. She's coming to dinner tonight. Ah, yes, the famous O'Brien family dinners. Just remember, don't show your hand too soon. Document everything. Has she made any significant changes to the business? I pulled out my phone, showing him photos I'd taken during my undercover visit. New signage, new menu, new pricing. She's drained the emergency fund for renovations, and she's invited a food critic from Elite Tastes. Johnny whistled. That could be costly, but it also works in our favor. Clear evidence of unauthorized changes. He scribbled some notes. What's your plan? I was hoping you'd help me with that part. He smiled. Already did. 6 months ago, remember? The memory flooded back. I'd been 7 months pregnant, sitting in this same chair, voicing my fears about leaving the bakery in someone else's hands. You said something about preparing for war while planning for peace, I recalled. Exactly, and you did the preparation. Now it's time for the execution. He handed me a new document. Here's what we're going to do. An hour later, I left Johnny's office with a clear strategy and renewed confidence. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Kent and a text from Maeve. Just saw the new menu prices. $12 for a basic muffin. Mom's lost it. I called Kent back while driving to pick up Lucy from daycare. Where have you been? He asked. Mom's been trying to reach you about dinner. Had some errands to run? Don't worry, I'll be there. 7 o'clock, right? Yeah, listen, about the bakery. Let's discuss it at dinner, I cut in smoothly. With everyone present. Lucy was all smiles when I picked her up, babbling about her day. As I buckled her into her car seat, my phone buzzed with a text from Layla. Food critic just left. It wasn't good. Bridget's on the warpath. Perfect timing. At home, I dressed Lucy in her cutest outfit, the one Bridget had given her, complete with a little bow that matched her eyes. Then I pulled out the folder Johnny had prepared and tucked it into my laptop bag, just in case. Kent arrived home early, looking nervous. Mom's bringing her special lasagna. How thoughtful, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I made dessert. His eyes widened. You baked? Just a simple cinnamon roll recipe. You know, the one that won Best of the County 3 years running. The one your mother discontinued. Malia. Yes, dear? He ran a hand through his hair. Just, please, don't let this dinner turn into a battle. I kissed his cheek. Of course not. It's just family dinner. As I finished getting ready, I caught my reflection in the mirror. 6 months ago, I'd sat in Johnny's office, a nervous pregnant woman worried about losing control of her business. Now I stood straighter, stronger, a mother ready to protect what was hers. The doorbell rang. I heard Kent greeting his mother and sister, followed by Bridget's commanding voice. I brought wine. We have so much to celebrate. I took a deep breath, checked that Lucy was secure in her playpen, and touched the laptop bag holding Johnny's documents. Time to remind my dear mother-in-law that some celebrations are premature. The lasagna looks lovely, Bridget, I said, passing the salad to Maeve. The dining room crackled with tension despite my forced smile. Thank you, dear. Bridget adjusted her designer blazer, still dressed for the bakery, I noticed. Though I must say, I'm surprised you had time to make dessert. Isn't Lucy keeping you busy enough? Maeve choked on her wine. Mom. What? I'm simply concerned about Malia spreading herself too thin. Speaking of which, Bridget dabbed her lips with a napkin, I have wonderful news about the bakery. Kent shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Maybe we should wait. I've secured a feature in Elite Tastes magazine, Bridget beamed. They're doing a spread on traditional bakeries transitioning to upscale establishments. We'll be their prime example. We? I took a slow sip of water. That's interesting. Of course, there are a few changes needed before the photo shoot. The old mixing bowls have to go, far too rustic. And that dreadful chalkboard menu? I'm ordering digital displays. Those bowls were antiques, Maeve protested. They had character. Character doesn't attract the right clientele, darling. Which reminds me, Bridget turned to me, I've been meaning to discuss the long-term arrangement. Clearly with Lucy needing your full attention. A sharp cry from the baby monitor interrupted her. I started to rise, but Kent squeezed my hand. I'll get her, he said, escaping the tension. Bridget waited until he left before continuing. As I was saying, I think it's time to make this transition permanent. I've already drafted the paperwork. Have you? I cut into my lasagna. That must have been time-consuming. Not at all. The lawyer made it quite simple. We just need your signature to formalize the arrangement. Maeve set down her fork. Mom, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. The bakery needs consistent leadership, not someone divided between business and baby. No offense, dear, she added, not sounding sorry at all. None taken. I reached for my laptop bag. Actually, I have some paperwork too. Kent returned with Lucy, who immediately reached for me. As I settled her in my lap, Bridget frowned. Really, Malia? Children don't belong at the dinner table. In my day. In your day, Maeve interrupted, you had a full-time nanny, remember? That's different. I was running your father's company. And I'm running my bakery, I said quietly. The room fell silent. Bridget's smile tightened. Dear, we both know that's not practical anymore. The changes I've implemented. Like charging $12 for muffins? Maeve cut in. Or firing Mrs. Martinez's granddaughter? I added. Our longest-serving employee? Business decisions, Bridget waved dismissively. Sometimes progress requires difficult choices. Progress? I bounced Lucy gently. Is that what you call draining the emergency fund? Bridget's fork clattered against her plate. How did you know about that? I still have online access to all accounts, just like I still legally own the bakery. For now, Bridget's voice hardened, but once you sign, I won't be signing anything. I met her gaze steadily. In fact, you'll be the one signing papers soon, returning control of my business. Kent looked between us. Mom, what exactly have you done? Nothing that wasn't necessary, Bridget snapped. Someone had to step in. Your wife clearly can't handle. Can't handle what? I stood, still holding Lucy. Running a successful business? Being a mother? Or just not letting you control everything? How dare you? The food critic hated it, didn't they? Maeve asked suddenly. That's why you're pushing this now. Bridget's face flushed. There were some misunderstandings. They hated it because it's not Sweet Dreams anymore, I said. You've stripped away everything that made it special. I made it better. Better? Kent finally spoke up. Mom, you changed the name without asking. You fired people who've worked there for years. You're charging ridiculous prices for worse products. Kent, I'm your mother. And Malia's my wife, the mother of your granddaughter, the woman who built that bakery from nothing. He stood. What you did, it's wrong. Bridget pushed back her chair. I can see this dinner was a mistake. Clearly none of you understand business. Actually, I reached into my laptop bag. I understand it very well. That's why I had these drawn up months ago. I slid Johnny's documents across the table. Bridget stared at them, her face paling. What is this? Insurance, I said simply. Against exactly this kind of takeover attempt. The baby monitor crackled with static, cutting through the tense silence, like a timer going off in the bakery, signaling that something was done. And something was definitely done, just not in the way Bridget had planned. She's planning a grand reopening, Layla's voice crackled through my phone's speaker as I paced Johnny's office the next morning. Complete rebranding, fancy invitations, local press. She's acting like last night never happened. When? I asked, watching Johnny review the surveillance photos from the bakery. 2 weeks from Saturday. She's already ordered new signage, even more expensive than the last one. Johnny looked up from his desk. Using business funds? Of course, Layla confirmed. And get this, she's hiring a string quartet. I pinched the bridge of my nose. For a bakery? Oh, it gets better, Layla lowered her voice. She's calling it O'Brien's Artisanal Patisserie now, complete with fake French accents for the servers. Johnny scribbled something in his notepad. Perfect. More unauthorized expenditures. Keep tracking everything, Layla. After hanging up, I collapsed into a chair. She's going to bankrupt my business before we can stop her. Not if we move fast. Johnny spread out several documents. The good news is, she's making our case stronger every day. The bad news? She's got her own lawyer now. Who? Marcus Reynolds. Never heard of him. That's because he usually handles divorces, not business law. But he's aggressive. Specializes in hostile takeovers of family businesses during separations. Johnny leaned forward. Bridget's planning something big, Malia. This reopening isn't just about the bakery. My phone buzzed with a text from Maeve. Mom's telling everyone you had a breakdown at dinner, says you're suffering from postpartum depression and can't be trusted with business decisions. Unbelievable, I muttered, showing Johnny the message. He nodded grimly. Classic move. She's laying groundwork to challenge your competency. Can she do that? She can try, but we've got something better than accusations. We've got evidence. He pulled up security footage on his laptop. Your friend Layla's been busy. Watch this. The video showed Bridget arguing with suppliers, canceling long-standing contracts, marking up prices by ridiculous amounts. Another clip captured her shredding what looked like original receipts. This is good, Johnny said, but we need more. Specifically, we need proof she's acting against the business's interests while knowing she lacks authority. My phone buzzed again. Kent this time. Mom's asking me to sign something about temporary power of attorney, says it's for your own good. There's our proof, Johnny smiled. Tell Kent to stall her, say he needs time to think about it. I texted back quickly, then turned to Johnny. What's our next move? First, we document everything from the past 3 months. Then we... A knock interrupted us. Johnny's assistant poked her head in. Sorry, but you need to see this. She handed me her tablet, open to the local business news website. My heart stopped at the headline. Historic Downtown Bakery announces luxury rebranding, exclusive preview event next week. She's moved up the timeline, Johnny muttered, reading over my shoulder. Smart. She's trying to force our hand. The article quotes me, I said incredulously. Owner Malia gracefully steps aside to focus on family, passing the torch to veteran businesswoman Bridget O'Brien. I never said this. Screenshot everything, Johnny instructed. This is getting better by the minute. Better? She's destroying my reputation. She's hanging herself. Every false quote, every unauthorized change, every penny spent, it's all ammunition. He grabbed his phone. Call Layla. Tell her to document every customer complaint, every employee concern. Then call Maeve. We need a family insider's perspective. I made the calls while Johnny drafted documents. Layla reported that several longtime customers had already canceled standing orders after seeing the article. Maeve revealed that Bridget had been meeting with real estate agents, possibly planning to relocate the bakery to a more upscale location. One more thing, Maeve added hesitantly. Mom's planning to serve notice at the reopening event. Some kind of public announcement about taking full control. She's invited practically everyone in town. I looked at Johnny. Can we stop her? Better. His eyes gleamed. We can let her do it. In fact, we can help her make it the biggest event possible. Invite everyone who's ever cared about Sweet Dreams Bakery. I don't understand. Think about it. She wants an audience? Let's give her one. But instead of watching you lose your bakery, he slid a new document across the desk. They'll watch her lose everything she thought she'd gained. I read the title, Cease and Desist with Immediate Injunctive Relief. The bigger she makes this event, Johnny explained, the more witnesses will have to her downfall. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just winning, it's letting your opponent defeat themselves in front of everyone they were trying to impress. I picked up my phone again, smiling for the first time in days. Maeve, tell your mother I'd love to help with the guest list for her big event. She fired me! Layla burst into my kitchen, her apron still dusted with flour. Said I wasn't refined enough for the new image. I handed her a cup of coffee. Perfect timing. Did you get everything? Every last document. She pulled a USB drive from her pocket. Financial records, emails, security footage, even photos of her shredding papers, but that's not the best part. What do you mean? Margaret called me right after I left. I nearly dropped my mug. Margaret? Bridget's best friend, Margaret? The same. Turns out she's not happy about what Bridget's doing. Says it goes against everything your bakery stands for. Layla leaned forward. She wants to help. Margaret had been Bridget's closest confidant for 20 years. This was huge. Help how? She has texts. Dozens of them. Bridget bragging about taking over, planning how to push you out. Some from months before your maternity leave. I grabbed my phone to call Johnny, but it rang first. Kent. Have you seen the new invitation? He asked without preamble. What invitation? Mom just sent it out. You should check your email. I pulled up my laptop, Layla reading over my shoulder. The invitation was garishly elegant, all gold foil and cursive script. O'Brien's Artisanal Patisserie cordially invites you to a grand transformation celebration. Witness the evolution of tradition as we embrace a new era of sophistication. Keep reading, Kent said grimly. At the bottom, join us as we bid farewell to Sweet Dreams Bakery and welcome an elevated dining experience. Special announcement regarding new ownership to follow presentation. She's really doing it, I whispered. She's actually planning to announce a takeover at her own party. There's more, Layla pointed at the screen. Look who's on the guest list. The mayor, the Chamber of Commerce, local business owners, food critics, everyone who'd supported Sweet Dreams over the years. She's invited everyone who matters in town, Kent said. Mom wants witnesses for her moment of triumph. Oh, she'll have witnesses all right. I forwarded the invitation to Johnny, just not for the triumph she's expecting. My phone buzzed again, Maeve this time. Mom's in rare form. She's hired security for the event, says she's worried you might make a scene. Security? Layla scoffed. At a bakery? Another buzz. Margaret. We need to talk. Meet me at the park in an hour. Bring your lawyer. Johnny arrived at the park before I did, already deep in conversation with Margaret on a bench. She looked nervous, clutching a thick folder. Malia, she stood as I approached. I should have come forward sooner. Why now? Because this isn't the Bridget I know anymore. Margaret hesitated. She's obsessed. This isn't just about the bakery. It's about proving she's still relevant, still in control. She handed me the folder. These are copies of everything. Text messages, emails, notes from planning meetings. She started plotting this the day you announced your pregnancy. Johnny flipped through the documents, his eyebrows rising. This is better than we hoped. Direct evidence of premeditation. There's something else, Margaret added. The food critic? From Elite Tastes? He's an old friend of Bridget's. She paid him to write a negative review of Sweet Dreams' original concept. My hands clenched. She what? She wanted justification for the changes, but it backfired. He wrote honestly about how she'd ruined a beloved local institution. Margaret pulled out her phone. I recorded her reaction when she read it. She wasn't pleased. The recording played. Bridget's voice, shrill with rage, ranting about showing everyone who was really in charge. Johnny was already typing on his laptop. This changes everything. We don't just have evidence of unauthorized changes, we have proof of deliberate sabotage. My phone lit up with a text from Layla. You need to see this. Bridget's installing new signs right now. Margaret peeked at the message. The rebranding isn't scheduled until next week. She's rushing everything. Because she knows we're on to her, Johnny said. She's trying to create a fait accompli before we can stop her. I stood up. Then let's not keep her waiting. Margaret, are you sure about helping us? She's your best friend. Was, Margaret corrected. The Bridget I knew would never destroy someone else's dream out of spite. She straightened her shoulders. Count me in. Johnny gathered the documents. I'll file the injunction today. But remember, we want her to go through with this party. Oh, she will, Margaret said grimly. Bridget never could resist a grand gesture. I looked at the invitation again. At all those important names who would witness whatever happened next. Perfect, I said, because I'm planning quite a gesture myself. The string quartet played softly as elegantly dressed guests filed into my transformed bakery. Crystal champagne flutes clinked, and servers in bow ties circulated with tiny, overpriced pastries. From my position near the back, I watched Bridget work the room in a designer suit that probably cost more than a month's worth of ingredients. "Ready?" Johnny whispered beside me. I adjusted Lucy's bow and nodded. "Everyone in position?" "Layla's by the kitchen, Margaret's near the podium, and Maeve's keeping your husband calm." He checked his watch. "The mayor just arrived. Perfect timing." Bridget tapped her glass, calling for attention. "Welcome, distinguished guests, to the dawn of a new era in culinary excellence." The crowd turned toward her. I spotted Mrs. Martinez in the back, clutching her granddaughter's hand. Several former employees stood nearby, watching with barely concealed anger. "Sweet Dreams Bakery served this community well," Bridget continued. "But times change. Today we embrace sophistication, elegance, and fraud?" I stepped forward, Lucy in my arms. The crowd parted like water. Bridget's smile froze. "Malia, dear, how unexpected. I thought you'd be home with the baby." "My baby and my bakery can coexist, Bridget, unlike your lies." "I don't know what you're talking about." She turned to the crowd. "You'll have to excuse my daughter-in-law. New motherhood can be so overwhelming." "Show them, Johnny." The projector screen behind Bridget flickered to life, displaying security footage of her shredding documents. Next came screenshots of her texts, plotting the takeover, followed by bank statements showing the drained accounts. "That's private business material," Bridget snapped. "Exactly," I agreed. "My private business. The one you tried to steal." The mayor stepped forward. "Mrs. O'Brien, is this true?" "Of course not. I was merely protecting the business while Malia recovered." "Recovered?" Margaret's voice rang out. "Or was pushed out. Play the recording." Bridget's own voice filled the room, ranting about her plans to force me out, to prove she was still relevant. The color drained from her face. "Margaret, how could you—" "How could I what? Tell the truth? That's what friends do, Bridget. They stop you from destroying yourself." I bounced Lucy gently as she began to fuss. "You know what's interesting? While you were busy trying to prove I couldn't handle motherhood and business, you proved something else entirely." "And what's that?" Bridget's voice was ice. "That Sweet Dreams was never about fancy decorations or overpriced pastries. It was about community." I gestured to the crowd. "Everyone here has a story about this bakery. Mrs. Martinez's grandson's first birthday cake, the mayor's daughter's wedding cookies, the Christmas bread pudding that won Best in Show 3 years running." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. "But you," I continued, "you tried to erase all that, because you couldn't stand that I built something successful without your help." "I made it better," Bridget exploded. "I made it sophisticated. You made it fail," Johnny interrupted, holding up papers. "The Real Elite Tastes review just came out. Would you like me to read it?" "Don't you dare!" "O'Brien's artisanal patisserie represents everything wrong with modern gentrification," he read loudly. "A beloved local institution stripped of its charm and inflated with pretension. The only thing more disappointing than the $12 muffins is the betrayal of Sweet Dreams' original vision." The crowd buzzed with conversation. Bridget grabbed for the papers, but Johnny held them out of reach. "That's not all," he continued. "I'm also holding a court order restoring full control to the legitimate owner, plus damages for unauthorized changes and financial misconduct." "You can't prove—" "We already have," I cut in. "Every document, every text, every illegal decision. It's all here." I shifted Lucy to my hip. "The only question is whether you'll sign the transfer papers voluntarily, or if we need to handle this in court." Bridget looked around wildly, finding no allies. Even Kent stood with Maeve, both watching their mother with disappointment. "You ungrateful little—" she started. "Sign the papers, Mom," Kent said quietly. "It's over." Johnny held out a pen. The string quartet had stopped playing. The entire room held its breath. With trembling fingers, Bridget snatched the pen. "You'll regret this," she hissed, scrawling her signature. "No," I said, watching her signature complete the restoration of my business. "I won't." I turned to the crowd. Now, who wants to try the real Sweet Dreams cinnamon rolls? The recipe that won Best of the County? Layla? Layla emerged from the kitchen with trays of my signature pastries, warm, fragrant, and decidedly unsophisticated. As the crowd surged forward, abandoning Bridget's fancy appetizers, I caught Kent's eye. He smiled, mouthing, "I love you." Lucy grabbed for a cinnamon roll, smearing icing on her fancy dress. Perfect. Some things were meant to be messy, authentic, and absolutely sweet. The morning sun streamed through Sweet Dreams' windows as I kneaded dough at my favorite workstation. The familiar rhythm felt like coming home. Lucy watched from her playpen in the corner, babbling happily at Layla, who was decorating cookies nearby. The bell chimed. "We're not open yet," I called out. "Not even for family?" I looked up to find Maeve holding a newspaper. "Depends. Are you bringing good news or bad news?" "See for yourself." She spread the paper on a flour-free spot. The headline read, "Local Bakery Triumph, Sweet Dreams Returns to Its Roots." "They interviewed half the town," Maeve grinned. "Mrs. Martinez gave quite the quote about community values versus corporate greed." "How's your mom taking it?" Maeve's smile faded slightly. "She's adjusting. Moving to Florida, actually. Says she needs a fresh start." "And Kent?" "Relieved, honestly. He's been different since the showdown, more confident standing up to her." She picked up a cookie. "These are new. Baby shower order, speaking of which." I nodded toward the door. Margaret entered, carrying a stack of papers. The last of Bridget's mess. All supplier contracts restored, all accounts straightened out. "Thank you," I said, "for everything." "Don't thank me yet." She pulled out one more document. "Bridget's trying to open a patisserie in Miami. She's already calling investors." I shrugged, turning back to my dough. "Let her. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way." The kitchen door swung open as Kent arrived with coffee for everyone. "Morning, ladies. Ready for the health inspector?" "Already done," Layla reported. "Perfect score, just like before." Lucy squealed, reaching for Kent. As he scooped her up, flour dusted his suit, but he didn't seem to mind. "You're going to be late for work," I reminded him. "Worth it. Besides, I brought something." He pulled a small package from his briefcase. "Found this while packing Mom's things." Inside was a faded recipe card. My hands trembled as I recognized the handwriting. "Your grandmother's original cinnamon roll recipe," Kent said softly. "Mom had it all along." "The one she claimed was lost?" Anger flared briefly, but then I laughed. "You know what? Let's use it today." "Really?" Maeve asked. "Why not? It's part of the bakery's history, the real history." I pinned the recipe card to my inspiration board, right next to Lucy's first picture. The morning crew began arriving. All the familiar faces Bridget had fired, now rehired. The kitchen filled with chatter and laughter as ovens preheated and ingredients were measured. "Miss Malia?" Jessica poked her head in. "There's someone asking about a job. Says she worked at that fancy patisserie across town." "Send her in." The young woman who entered looked nervous but determined. "I know you probably don't want anyone associated with upscale bakeries, but do you know how to make bread from scratch?" "Yes, but can you frost a cake without using fondant?" She smiled slightly. "I prefer buttercream, actually." "You're hired. Layla will show you around." As the kitchen settled into its morning routine, I watched Lucy playing with measuring spoons, already at home in the bakery that would someday be hers, if she wanted it. "Thinking deep thoughts?" Kent asked, stealing a warm cinnamon roll. "Just realizing something. Your mother was right about one thing." "Oh?" "Change is inevitable, but it doesn't have to mean losing what matters." The front bell chimed again. This time it was Johnny, carrying his usual briefcase. "Don't tell me there's more paperwork," I groaned. "Actually, I'm here as a customer. My daughter's wedding? She wants those raspberry tarts you used to make." "Used to?" "Check the new menu board." He looked up at the chalkboard where I'd written today's specials. Among the tried-and-true favorites was a section labeled Sweet Dreams Classics, back by popular demand. "Perfect," Johnny smiled. Some things shouldn't change. Lucy knocked over a bag of flour, sending white clouds everywhere. As Kent and I rushed to clean up, laughing at our powder-covered daughter, I caught a glimpse of our reflection in the window. A family in our flour-dusted, wonderfully imperfect glory, surrounded by the sweet smell of success baking in the ovens. The morning sun lit up the original Sweet Dreams Bakery sign, restored to its rightful place. Below it, I'd added a small tagline, "Where tradition meets tomorrow." Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about staying true to who you are and letting karma handle the rest.
The call came at 3 a.m. My brother Kailan's voice trembled on the other end of the line, begging me to bail him out of county jail. Again. I rubbed my eyes, already mentally calculating how much of my savings would vanish this time. I'm Remy, and I've spent my entire life trying to be the responsible one. While that might sound admirable, in my family, it's made me the boring sister, the dependable one everyone calls in emergencies, but forgets to invite to celebrations. Please, Rem, Kylan's voice cracked. I messed up. I know I did, but I can't stay here another night. I sighed, already grabbing my keys. What happened this time? Bar fight. Some guy was harassing this girl and I stepped in. Things got out of hand. Of course they did. That was Kylan's specialty, getting involved in situations that got out of hand. But I had to admit, defending someone did sound better than his usual drunk and disorderly charges. The jail was exactly as depressing as you'd expect at this hour. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I counted out $5,000 in bail money, nearly everything I had left after putting a down payment on my condo last month. You're an angel, Rem, Kylan said when they finally released him. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and his designer shirt was stained with what looked like dried blood. I swear I'll pay you back this time, every penny, like you paid me back the last 3 times. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. He grabbed my hands, his green eyes wide with sincerity. I mean it. I just landed this amazing new job. First paycheck comes in next week. You'll be my first priority. I wanted to believe him. God, I always wanted to believe him. Mum and Dad don't need to know about this, he added quickly. They never do. I started walking toward the exit. Though maybe if they did, they'd finally see. See what? He caught up to me. That I'm not perfect? They'd just blame you somehow. You know how they are. He was right. Our parents had mastered the art of turning every one of Kilan's failures into someone else's fault, usually mine. Why hadn't I been watching out for him? Why hadn't I stopped him from going to that bar? You can crash at my place tonight, I offered, against my better judgment. But just tonight, back at my condo, I made up the couch while Kylan showered. Sophia, my best friend, had texted, "Tell me you didn't bail him out again." I didn't respond. Sophia had made her opinions about my brother crystal clear over the years. This place is really coming together, Kylan said, emerging from the bathroom in borrowed sweats. He wandered around my living room, picking up framed photos and knickknacks. You've done well for yourself, sis. No thanks to having to bail you out every few months, I muttered. He flopped onto the couch, running a hand through his damp hair. I know I've been a burden, but things are different now. This new job, it's going to change everything. I can feel it. I wanted to believe him. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time, my faith in him would finally pay off, and our parents would see that I'd been right to stand by him. Get some sleep, I said, heading to my room. We'll talk more in the morning. But when morning came, Kylan was gone. So was my laptop, my grandmother's antique ring, and the emergency cash I kept in my desk drawer. He'd even taken the spare key I'd stupidly left on the kitchen counter. My hand shook as I called his cell. Straight to voicemail, I called again. And again. You've reached Kylan. Leave a message. I sank to my kitchen floor, the cold tiles pressing against my legs. This wasn't happening. Not again. Not after everything I'd done for him. My phone buzzed, a text from Sophia. Check your online banking. With trembling fingers, I logged into my account. My savings account balance stared back at me, $12.47. He'd cleaned me out completely. Another text from Sophia. I'm coming over. Don't call your parents yet. But I already was, even knowing how this would play out. Mom answered on the third ring. Remy, it's barely 8 a.m. on a Saturday. Kylan stole from me, I blurted out. He took everything. There was a pause, then a sigh. Oh, honey, I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. You know your brother would never... I hung up before she could finish. Tears burned in my eyes as I stared at my reflection in the blank TV screen. The responsible one. The dependable one. The fool who never learned. But something inside me had finally snapped. This time would be different. This time, I wasn't going to let it go. Sophia arrived with coffee and a determined look in her eyes. We're filing a police report, she announced, setting the cups down on my kitchen counter. You know I can't do that, I said, wrapping my hands around the warm cup. He's my brother. He's a thief who just stole your life savings. Sophia pulled out her phone. How much exactly did he take, including the bail money and what he took from my accounts? Almost 30,000. The number felt like a punch to the gut. Jesus Christ, Remy. Sophia ran a hand through her dark hair. That's it. We're going to your parents' house. Right now. I knew it wouldn't help, but I let her drive me there anyway. The familiar 2-story colonial looked exactly as it always had. Perfect lawn, perfect flowers, perfect facade, hiding all the dysfunction within. Mom opened the door before we could knock. Oh, good, you've calmed down, she said, as if my earlier call had been nothing more than a childish tantrum. Come in, both of you. I'm making brunch. Dad was in his usual spot at the kitchen table, reading his tablet. He barely looked up as we entered. Mom, Dad, I started, my voice stronger than I felt. Kylan stole $30,000 from me last night, after I bailed him out of jail. Dad finally looked up. Jail? What happened? Of course that's what he focused on. Bar fight, apparently, I said. But that's not the point. A bar fight? Mom interrupted, cracking eggs into a bowl. That doesn't sound like your brother at all. Are you sure you understood what happened? Sophia made a disgusted sound beside me. Mrs. Boyd, with all due respect, your son just committed grand theft against your daughter. That should be your concern right now. Mom's hand stilled. I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. Kylan would never steal. He probably just borrowed it for an investment opportunity. He's very business-minded, you know. An investment opportunity. I laughed, the sound harsh and unfamiliar. He took my grandmother's ring. Was that for business too? Well, you should have kept it in a safer place, Dad said, as if that explained everything. I felt something inside me crack. Are you serious right now? Your son, your precious golden boy, just stole everything I had, and you're blaming me for not hiding my belongings better. Don't take that tone with us, Mom warned, pointing her whisk at me. We raised you better than that. Better than what? Better than telling the truth? Better than expecting my own parents to care when their daughter gets robbed? Dad set down his tablet with a sharp click. That's enough, Remy. Your brother is going through a difficult time. He's trying to find his path in life. And I'm not, I shot back. I work 60-hour weeks. I just bought my first home. I had savings, actual savings, until your son cleaned me out. But none of that matters because it's always about Kylan. You've always been jealous of your brother, Mom said softly, shaking her head. Ever since you were children. We hoped you'd grow out of it. Sophia stepped forward. Okay, that's it. We're leaving. But first, when Kylan shows up here, because we all know he will, remember this conversation. Remember how you chose to protect a thief over your daughter. He's family, Dad said firmly. And what am I? I whispered. The silence that followed was deafening. We were halfway to the door when my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered it, hoping against hope it was Kylan coming to his senses. Instead, my grandmother Gemma's voice crackled through the speaker. Remy, dear, come see me, right now. Grandma, I'm kind of in the middle of... Now, Remy. Her voice was steel. There are things you need to know. Things that will explain everything. I looked at Sophia, who nodded. Go, I'll drop you off. What things? I asked into the phone. Things your parents never wanted you to know, Gemma replied. About Kylan, about why they treat him the way they do, about why they've never been able to love you the way you deserve. My hand tightened on the phone. Behind me, I could hear Mom calling my name, probably ready to serve her perfect brunch and pretend nothing was wrong. As if my world hadn't just imploded. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I told Gemma. As Sophia drove me away from my childhood home, I watched my parents grow smaller in the side mirror. They stood in the doorway, still perfect, still united, still choosing Kylan. But Gemma's words echoed in my head. Things you need to know. Things that will explain everything. For the first time since finding my empty apartment that morning, I felt something other than despair. I felt hope. Grandma Gemma's house smelled like cinnamon and secrets. She was waiting in her favorite armchair, a leather-bound photo album in her lap. Her silver hair was perfectly styled as always, but her hands trembled slightly as she gestured for me to sit. Tea? She asked, though a steaming cup already waited for me. Grandma, what's going on? What do you know about Kylan? She opened the album, flipping through pages until she reached a particular photograph. It showed my mother, much younger, standing beside a man I didn't recognize. Your mother was 25 when this was taken, Gemma said quietly. 3 months pregnant with Kylan. The man beside her isn't your father. The room seemed to tilt sideways. What? His name was James, a colleague of your mother's at the advertising agency. They had an affair that lasted nearly a year. Gemma's voice was steady, but her eyes were sad. Your father never knew. Still doesn't. I stared at the photograph. The man, James, had Kylan's same green eyes, the same sharp jawline. But how? Dad never suspected. Your mother discovered she was pregnant right after your father got his big promotion. The one that changed everything for them. Gemma took a sip of her tea. She chose security over truth. James moved away, never knowing he had a son. Your father was so thrilled about the pregnancy he never questioned it. My hands were shaking so badly I had to set down my teacup. And you've known all this time. I caught them together once before she knew she was pregnant. She begged me not to tell. I agreed, thinking the affair would end naturally. Gemma's mouth tightened. I never imagined she'd trap your father with another man's child. But why are you telling me now? Because I've watched them destroy you trying to protect their secret. Gemma reached for my hand. They've spent 30 years overcompensating with Kylan out of guilt. Every time they favor him, every time they excuse his behavior, it's because they're terrified of anyone questioning why he doesn't quite fit. And me? My voice cracked. What about me? You're the child they actually made together, but loving you normally would mean treating you both equally. They couldn't risk the comparison. She squeezed my hand. It was easier to push you away than face their lies. I pulled my hand back, standing abruptly. This is insane. You're telling me my entire life has been shaped by their guilt over a lie. There's more. Gemma stood, moving to her desk with surprising agility for her age. She returned with a yellowed bank document. When your grandfather died, he left equal trusts for both his grandchildren. But there was a condition. The money could only go to biological descendants. My heart stopped. What? Your parents have been secretly redirecting Kylan's portion to him through other means. They couldn't let him discover he had no claim to the money. She handed me the document. Your portion is still there, untouched. They've been hiding its existence from you, claiming the trusts were dissolved years ago. I scanned the document, numbers jumping out at me, numbers with lots of zeros. How much? Enough to change your life. Gemma's eyes glinted. Enough to make them very, very nervous if the wrong questions were asked. I sank back into my chair, mind racing. Does anyone else know? Just your mother's old lawyer, who helped arrange everything. He retired years ago. Gemma smiled slightly. But he kept excellent records. Records I've been holding on to, waiting for the right moment. Why now? Because you're finally angry enough to do something about it. She closed the photo album with a snap. Your brother stole from you. Your parents dismissed it. But now you have something they can't dismiss. The truth. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Please come home. We can talk about this rationally. I showed it to Gemma, who snorted. Rationally? That's rich coming from a woman who's built her entire life on an irrational lie. What should I do? That depends. Gemma leaned forward. Do you want your money back, or do you want something more? More? Justice, dear. Recognition. The power to finally make them see you. I looked down at the trust document again, then at the photograph of my mother, and the man who gave Kylan his green eyes. 30 years of favoritism, of gaslighting, of making me feel less than, all because they couldn't face their own lies. I want it all, I said finally. The money, the justice, the truth, everything they've kept from me. Gemma smiled, and for the first time, I saw where I got my strength from. Then let's make a plan. A family reunion? Sophia nearly choked on her coffee. That's your master plan. I spread the documents across my kitchen table, bank statements, trust paperwork, and the photograph Gemma had given me. Think about it. The whole family will be there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all the people Mum and Dad have been lying to for years. And you're sure about this? Sophia picked up the trust document. Because once you do this, there's no going back. They're hosting it next Saturday. I pulled up the family group chat on my phone. Mum's already sent out the invitations. She's trying to smooth things over after what happened with Kylan. Speaking of your thieving brother, any word from him? Nothing. I started organizing the papers into a folder. But he'll show up. He never misses a chance to be the center of attention. The next week passed in a blur of preparation. Gemma introduced me to her lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Rachel who specialized in trust litigation. The money is legally yours, Rachel confirmed, reviewing the documents in her downtown office. We can file a petition to access it immediately, but that would tip your hand. I want to wait, I said, just until after Saturday. Rachel nodded. I'll have everything ready. Just say the word. Friday night, Mum called. You are coming tomorrow, aren't you, dear? The whole family's asking about you. Of course, Mum. I kept my voice light. Wouldn't miss it. And you're feeling better about everything? Much better. I thought about the folder sitting on my desk, loaded with 30 years of secrets. I've gained some perspective. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear. Sophia helped me dress, a crisp blue sundress that made me look professional and put together. You're sure you don't want me to come? This is something I need to do alone. I hugged her tight. But keep your phone on. The family was already gathering when I arrived. Aunt Linda's famous potato salad sat next to Uncle Mark's grilled chicken. Cousins chased each other around the backyard, while the adults clustered in groups catching up. Mum rushed over immediately. You came! She tried to hug me, but I stepped back. Where's Dad? Grilling with your uncles. She frowned at my movement. Honey, about last week. Later, Mum. I spotted Gemma arriving through the side gate. We'll talk later. The next hour was excruciating. I made small talk, picked at my food, and watched the door. Finally, right on cue, Kylan strolled in. Sorry I'm late, he announced, immediately drawing everyone's attention. Traffic was horrible. Mum and Dad flocked to him, all smiles and hugs. No mention of the theft, of course. No questions about where he'd been. I caught Gemma's eye across the yard. She nodded slightly. Actually, I said, raising my voice, I'm glad you're here, Kylan. I have something to share with everyone. The conversations quieted. Mom's smile faltered. Remy, Dad warned, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time. I pulled out the folder I'd been carrying. I recently learned some interesting family history, about trusts and secrets and lies. Mom went pale. Remy, please. Did you know Grandpa left trust funds for his grandchildren? I addressed the gathering crowd, but only for his biological grandchildren. Kylan frowned. What are you talking about? There weren't any trust funds. Actually, there were. I started passing out copies of the documents. Mum and Dad just didn't want anyone asking why you weren't eligible for yours. The backyard erupted in murmurs as people began reading. Aunt Linda gasped. Uncle Mark stopped grilling. You see, I continued, pulling out the photograph, Mom had a secret back in the day, a secret named James. Kylan snatched the photo, his face draining of color as he stared at the man who shared his eyes. That's enough, Dad shouted, but it was too late. Is this true? Aunt Linda demanded, waving the trust document. Did you lie to all of us? Mom was crying now. We were trying to protect our family. By stealing from your daughter, Gemma's voice cut through the chaos. By favoring a child born of adultery over your own flesh and blood. Kylan looked like he might be sick. Mom? Dad? What is this? But our parents had no answers, only tears and stammered excuses as 30 years of deception crumbled around them. I walked over to Kylan, who was still staring at the photograph. Now you know why they always protected you, why they excused everything you did, even stealing from me. He looked up, and for the first time in our lives, I saw real fear in his eyes. The trust fund is mine, I said quietly. All of it. And I'm done letting this family treat me like I'm worth less than you. The backyard had gone silent, waiting to see what would happen next. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Now, I said, let's talk about paying me back. This is ridiculous, Kylan sputtered, trying to regain his composure. You can't just show up and drop bombs like this. These documents could be fake. Could they? I turned to our mother. Mom, want to tell everyone if they're fake? Mom sank into a patio chair, mascara running down her cheeks. I was young. I made a mistake. The mistake wasn't the affair, Gemma cut in. The mistake was lying to everyone for 30 years and punishing Remy for your guilt. Aunt Linda stepped forward, still clutching the documents. All those times you told us Remy was difficult or jealous. You were just covering your tracks, weren't you? And the trust fund? Uncle Mark joined in. Dad left that money for his grandchildren. You had no right to hide it. Dad finally found his voice. We did what we thought was best for this family. Best for the family, I laughed. You mean best for your reputation, best for your perfect son who isn't even yours. Watch it, Kylan growled, stepping toward me. Or what? I met his gaze. You'll steal from me again? Hard to do that when everyone knows what you really are. Our cousin Sarah, who'd always idolized Kylan, spoke up. You stole from her. It wasn't like that, Kylan protested. I was going to pay it back. With what money? I pulled out my phone, showing the banking app. You cleaned out my accounts. $30,000, Kylan. Plus Grandma's ring. Where is it? He shifted uncomfortably. I pawned it. The collective gasp from the family was audible. That ring had been a family heirloom. Of course you did. I turned back to our parents. And let me guess, you'll find a way to excuse that too? Remy, please. Mom stood up, reaching for me. We can work this out privately, as a family. We stopped being a real family the moment you chose your lie over your daughter. I stepped back from her reach. Now everyone knows the truth. About Kylan's father, about the trust fund, about everything. What do you want? Dad's voice was desperate now. Money? We can figure something out. I want what's legally mine. I nodded toward Gemma, who pulled out her phone. My lawyer is ready to file the paperwork for the trust, unless you'd prefer to handle this through the courts. Mom went even paler. The courts? Fraud is a serious crime, Gemma said calmly, especially when it involves trust funds. Kylan suddenly lunged forward, grabbing my arm. You can't do this to me, to us. Several relatives moved to intervene, but I held up my hand. Actually, I can, and I will. Unless what? He released my arm. Unless you sign a repayment agreement for everything you stole, with interest. I don't have that kind of money. Then I guess you better find it, I smiled sweetly. I'm sure Mum and Dad will help. They always do, don't they? The backyard had become a theater with relatives watching the drama unfold like a live soap opera. Some were filming on their phones, others whispering among themselves. "And what about us?" Dad gestured between himself and Mom. "What do you want from us?" "I want you to admit what you did, to everyone. No more lies, no more excuses." I looked around at our assembled family. "I want them all to know exactly who you are and what you've done." Mom broke down completely then, sobbing into her hands. Dad looked lost, his perfect family facade crumbling before his eyes. Kylan stared at the photograph of his real father again. "Did you ever plan to tell me?" "We wanted to protect you," Mom whispered. "Protect him?" I scoffed. "You enabled him. You turned him into this because you couldn't face your own guilt." Aunt Linda started gathering her things. "I think we should go. Clearly, this family has a lot to work through." Other relatives followed suit, but not before giving me supportive hugs or whispering quick apologies for never seeing the truth before. As the backyard emptied, I turned to my parents one last time. "My lawyer will be in touch about the trust fund, and Kylan," I faced my brother, or whatever he was to me now, "you have 30 days to start paying me back, or I'll press charges for theft." "You wouldn't," he challenged, but his voice wavered. "Try me." I gathered my things, ready to leave. "I'm not the pushover you all thought I was. Not anymore." Gemma linked her arm through mine as we walked toward the gate. Behind us, I could hear Mom's sobs, Dad's attempts to comfort her, and Kylan's angry demands for more answers. But for the first time in my life, their drama wasn't my problem. "Ready to go?" Gemma asked. I nodded, stepping into the sunlight. Ready for whatever comes next. 3 days after the reunion, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly wanted to check in. Mum called hourly until I blocked her number. Dad sent lengthy emails that I deleted without reading. Sophia sat across from me at our favorite coffee shop, scrolling through the family group chat she'd been added to by my cousin Sarah. "Your Aunt Linda is going off. Apparently, she's demanding your mum step down from organizing the annual charity gala. The one Mom's been running for 15 years. I sipped my latte. "That's got to hurt." "Serves her right." Sophia looked up. "Heads up, incoming." I turned to see Kylan pushing through the coffee shop door, looking considerably less polished than usual. His designer clothes were wrinkled, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. "We need to talk," he said, pulling up a chair without asking. "About your repayment plan. Great. My lawyer drafted an agreement. About everything." He ran his hands through his unkempt hair. "I found him, James, my real father." That got my attention. "How?" "Facebook. Wasn't hard. He lives in Seattle now." Kylan's voice cracked. "He had no idea I existed. When I called him..." "You called him?" "Yesterday. He's flying in tomorrow." Kylan laughed bitterly. "Turns out he always wanted kids. Mum told him she'd had a miscarriage." Sophia whistled low. "Your mum's really going for gold in the lying Olympics." "I know I screwed up," Kylan said, ignoring her. "The money, the ring, I was desperate. This business opportunity came up." "Save it," I cut him off. "I don't care about your excuses. Do you have my money or not?" He pulled out an envelope. 5,000. It's all I could get together so far." "And the ring?" He looked down. "I can't get it back. The pawn shop already sold it. The last piece of my grandmother, gone forever." I took a slow breath. "Then you better find a way to pay me its value. That ring was worth 12,000. 12,000? He went pale. "Remy, please, I'm trying here." "Trying wouldn't have been necessary if you hadn't stolen from me in the first place." I took the envelope. 25,000 to go, plus interest. "Mum and Dad can't help anymore," he blurted out. "The family's freezing them out. Dad's partners at the firm are calling for a review of his position. Mum's lost half her charity board." "Sounds like karma to me," Sophia muttered. My phone buzzed, a text from Gemma. "Your trust fund paperwork is filed. Meeting with the bank tomorrow at 10. "Look," I told Kylan, standing up. "You made your choices. Now you get to live with them. just like Mum and Dad get to live with theirs. They're still our parents, he protested. Are they? Because it seems like everything I knew about our family was a lie. I gathered my things. Figure out how to pay me back, Kylan. That's all I care about now. What about James? He grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. Don't you want to meet him? He's technically your... I don't know what he is to you. He's nothing to me. I pulled free. Just like you're nothing to me anymore. Sophia followed me out, leaving Kylan sitting alone with his $5,000 in cash and a lifetime of lies unraveling around him. That was intense, she said as we walked to my car. You okay? Before I could answer, I spotted Mum across the street, getting out of her car. Remy, she called out, please, just talk to me. You should go, I told Sophia. This isn't going to be pretty. Mum hurried across the street, ignoring the honking cars. I've been trying to reach you for days. I blocked your number for a reason. I know you're angry, she said, reaching for me, but we're still family. We can fix this. Fix what exactly? I stepped back. The 30 years of lies, the way you treated me, the fact that you let your golden boy steal from me and did nothing. I'm your mother. No, I said quietly. You're just the woman who gave birth to me, and then spent my entire life punishing me for not being him. Tears filled her eyes. That's not true. I love you. Maybe you do. But not enough to be honest. Not enough to protect me. Not enough to be a real mother. A crowd was gathering, people stopping to watch the drama unfold on the sidewalk. James is coming tomorrow, she whispered. Please, don't let him destroy what's left of our family. I laughed, the sound harsh and cold. You destroyed this family all by yourself, Mom. I just exposed the wreckage. I got in my car, leaving her crying on the sidewalk. In my rearview mirror, I saw Kylan emerge from the coffee shop, watching me drive away. Some families, I realized, aren't worth saving. The bank meeting was brief but life-changing. As I signed the final documents transferring the trust fund into my name, the banker smiled. Congratulations, Ms. Remy. You now have access to your full inheritance of $850,000. I nearly dropped my pen. I'm sorry, what? With compound interest over 30 years, she explained, the original amount has grown significantly. Outside the bank, I called Gemma. Did you know? About the amount? Of course. I could hear her smile. Your grandfather was a smart investor. He wanted his grandchildren taken care of. Children, I corrected, not grandchildren, just me. Just you, she agreed, the rightful heir. My phone buzzed with another call, Dad this time. I almost declined it, but something made me answer. James is here, he said without preamble. He wants to meet you. I told Keelan. Please, Dad's voice cracked. Just come to the house, one last time. I found myself driving there against my better judgment. Sophia's words echoed in my head. You don't owe them anything, but maybe I owed myself closure. The house was quiet when I arrived. In the living room, Mom sat rigid on the couch beside Dad. Kylan paced by the window, and in the armchair sat a man I'd only seen in photographs. Older now, but with those same green eyes. James stood when I entered. You must be Remy. Must I? I remained by the door. I'm not sure who I am in this family anymore. Remy, Mom started, but James held up his hand. Let me speak, Edith. He turned back to me. I want you to know I had no idea. About Kylan, about any of it. If I had... You'd have what? I asked. Swooped in and saved us all. Changed the last 30 years. Maybe. He shrugged. We'll never know. But I'm here now, trying to understand. Kylan stopped pacing. He wants to make things right. Right? I laughed. There is no making this right. Mom lied to everyone. Dad lived in denial. You stole from me. And now what? We're supposed to have some big happy family reunion because biological dad showed up. We were trying to protect, Mom began. If you say protect this family one more time, I swear to God. I took a deep breath. The trust fund cleared today. Do you want to know how much money you kept from me? Dad flinched. Remy, please. $850,000. I watched their faces pale. That's what your lies cost me. That's what you gave to him instead. James stepped forward. I have money too. I want to help. I don't want your money, I shouted. I don't want anything from any of you. Don't you get it? This isn't about money anymore. It's about 30 years of making me feel worthless because you couldn't face your own mistakes. The room fell silent. Outside, a lawnmower droned. Someone's kid laughed. Normal life going on while my world kept shattering. I filed a police report this morning, I said quietly, about the theft. Kylan stumbled back. You wouldn't. I warned you, 30 days to start repaying me. You gave me $5,000 and excuses. I pulled out my phone, showing them the police report number. The detective is very interested in the pattern of family cover-ups. We can fix this, Mom pleaded. James can help with the money. It's not about the money. I turned to James. You seem like a nice man. Maybe you would have been a better father than the one I got. But I don't need a father anymore. I don't need any of you. Remy, Keelan stepped toward me. You're my sister. No, I said softly. I'm not. I'm just the person you stole from. The one who finally stopped letting this family treat her like she didn't matter. I walked to the door, then paused. The detective will be in touch, Kylan. Mom, Dad, I'm sure the country club will love this latest scandal. And James? I met those familiar green eyes. I hope you find whatever you're looking for, but it's not here. As I drove away, my phone exploded with messages. I ignored them all, except one from Gemma. Come over, I made pie. In my rearview mirror, I could see them all spilling onto the front porch. The parents who failed me, the brother who wasn't my brother, and the father who came too late. But ahead of me lay something better. Freedom, truth, and the knowledge that I'd finally stopped letting their lies define my worth. Sometimes, I realized, the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth, it's walking away and letting karma do the rest. Gemma's kitchen window offered a perfect view of the moving truck in my parents' driveway. We watched as workers carried out boxes and furniture while sharing her famous apple pie. The firm asked Dad to retire early, I said, cutting another slice. Apparently, fraud allegations and family scandals are bad for business. And your mother? Lost her position at the charity. They're downsizing to a condo. I smiled. Karma's been busy. My phone buzzed. A text from the detective. K-Boyd turned himself in this morning. Wants to make a deal. Good, Gemma said when I showed her. About time he faced consequences. Sophia burst through the back door, waving a newspaper. Have you seen this? The Society page headline read, Prominent families fall from grace, fraud, theft, and hidden heirs exposed. Mum must be devastated, I said, but found I didn't care anymore. Any word from James? Left town yesterday, Sophia reported, stealing a bite of my pie. Apparently finding out your long-lost son is a thief wasn't the heartwarming reunion he hoped for. The doorbell rang. Gemma answered it, returning with a small package. It's from that detective. Inside was my grandmother's ring, still beautiful despite everything. A note read, Recovered from pawn shop. Owner cooperated when charges were mentioned. I slipped it on, feeling whole again. Think they'll ever forgive me? Forgive you? Gemma scoffed. For what? Telling the truth? For destroying their perfect family image. They destroyed that themselves, Sophia said firmly. You just stopped covering for them. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Ms. Remy? A woman's professional voice. This is Andrea from Riverside Publishing. We received your manuscript submission. I put the phone on speaker as she continued. Your story about family secrets and redemption. We'd like to offer you a contract. After the call ended, Sophia squealed and hugged me. A book deal, see? Everything really does happen for a reason. Speaking of reasons, Gemma pulled out an envelope. I have something for you. Inside was a key and a deed. What's this? This house, she said simply. I'm moving to that beachfront condo I've always wanted, and I want you to have this place, a real home with real family memories. Gemma, I can't. You can, and you will. She squeezed my hand. It's time this house belonged to someone who understands the value of truth. Through the window, I watched my parents supervising the movers, looking small and defeated. Mom glanced up, catching my eye. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then she turned away, and I felt the last thread of our old relationship snap. The detective says Kylan's agreed to full restitution, Sophia read from her phone, plus community service. Think he'll actually change? Does it matter? She grabbed more pie. You've got your money, your ring, a book deal, and now a house. You won. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like finally being free. The moving truck pulled away, taking with it 30 years of lies and pretense. Mom and Dad got into their car without looking back. You know what this place needs? Sophia gestured around Gemma's. No, my kitchen. A housewarming party, with only people who actually care about you. First, Gemma held up her fork. We need to talk about your book. I have some stories about your mother's childhood that would make excellent chapters. My phone buzzed one last time, an email from Dad. I'm sorry we failed you. I'm sorry I failed you. Someday, I hope you'll let me try to be the father you deserved. I deleted it without responding. Maybe someday, I'd be ready for their apologies. But today was about moving forward, not looking back. So, I said, reaching for the coffee pot. About those stories. Gemma's eyes twinkled. Well, there was this one time your mother tried to run away with the gardener's son. As laughter filled the kitchen, real, genuine laughter, I realized something. Family isn't about blood or secrets or lies. It's about the people who stand by you when the truth comes out. The ones who help you pick up the pieces and build something better. Sophia and Gemma kept talking, their voices warm and real in my new kitchen. Outside, the moving truck disappeared around the corner, taking my old life with it. Good riddance, I thought, and cut another slice of pie. Sometimes the happy ending isn't about forgiveness or reconciliation. Sometimes it's about letting go and finding out who you really are when you're finally completely free. The crystal champagne flute shattered against the wall behind me, missing my head by inches. The room fell silent, except for my mother's ragged breathing. Even in her designer dress and perfectly coiffed hair, she looked unhinged, a stark contrast to the elegant corporate party surrounding us. I'm Willow, and this was supposed to be my moment. My promotion to the executive board at age 32 should have been cause for celebration, not another battlefield with my mother. Engineering? She spat the word like poison. I didn't raise you to waste your life playing with machines. You were meant for greater things, Willow. Law school, remember? The entire executive floor of Palmer Technologies watched in horrified fascination. My colleague Zoe stepped forward, but I raised my hand slightly, stopping her. This was my fight. Mother, you're embarrassing yourself, I said, keeping my voice steady. Security will escort you out if necessary. She laughed, that hollow, cruel sound I'd grown up hearing. Security? In case you've forgotten, I paid for your education. Everything you are today is because of my own hard work, I cut in. The scholarship paid for my education. You know that. Dylan, my boyfriend, appeared at my side, his artist's hands gentle on my shoulder. Mrs. Bryant, I think it's time for you to leave. And who are you to tell me what to do? She sneered. Another disappointment my daughter surrounds herself with. Edwin, my mentor and the closest thing to a real parent I'd ever had, stepped forward. Tiffany, enough. You're making a scene. The party had completely derailed now. Milena from HR was already on her phone, presumably calling security. But before anyone could act, the room's attention shifted to the entrance as our CEO, Mr. Richardson, walked in with an unfamiliar man. Ladies and gentlemen, Richardson announced, I have an important announcement. As of next month, I'll be stepping down as CEO. I'd like to introduce my successor, Dominic Paul. The champagne glass I was holding slipped from my fingers, crashing to the floor. The new CEO, my father, who I hadn't seen in 20 years, locked eyes with me across the room. My mother's face went chalk white. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." I felt the room spinning. Dylan's grip on my shoulder tightened, grounding me. Zoe appeared on my other side, whispering, "Breathe, Will, just breathe." Dominic Paul, the man whose name my mother had forbidden in our house, the man she'd told me abandoned us for his career, the man whose child support checks, I'd later discovered, she'd returned unopened for years. He looked older than in the faded photograph I kept hidden in my desk drawer, but his eyes, my eyes, were the same deep brown. He started walking toward me, but my mother intercepted him. "You have no right," she hissed. "No right to be here." "I have every right, Tiffany," he replied calmly. "This is my company now, and that's my daughter you were just berating." The silence in the room was deafening. I straightened my spine, years of engineering presentations kicking in. "Mr. Paul," I said formally, "welcome to Palmer Technologies." His face showed a flicker of pain at my formal tone, but he nodded. "Thank you, Willow. I look forward to working with our newest board member." My mother's laugh was borderline hysterical. "Oh, I see how it is. You orchestrated this whole thing, didn't you? Getting your precious daughter on the board just before taking over." "Actually," Edwin stepped in, "Willow earned her position months before Mr. Paul was even considered for CEO. Her work on the Sustainable Energy Project saved the company millions." I watched my mother's face contort as her narrative crumbled. She'd spent years telling me I'd never succeed in engineering, that I was throwing my life away. Now here I stood, the youngest board member in the company's history, face to face with the father she'd tried to erase. "This isn't over," she snapped, grabbing her purse. "Don't think for a moment this changes anything." As she stormed out, I felt something shift inside me. The scared little girl who'd always sought her approval faded away, replaced by something stronger. "I apologize for the disruption," I addressed the room. "Please enjoy the rest of the evening." The party gradually resumed, though I could feel the curious glances and whispered conversations. Dylan squeezed my hand. "You okay?" I wasn't okay. My carefully constructed world had just imploded, but I was still standing. "Willow," my father, "No, Mr. Paul," said quietly. "We should talk." I looked at him. This stranger who shared my DNA, this man who was now my boss. "Yes," I replied, "we should, but not tonight." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. As he walked away, Zoe handed me a fresh glass of champagne. "Well," she said, "at least no one can say your promotion party was boring." Despite everything, I laughed. She was right. This was just the beginning. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to face whatever came next. No more hiding, no more seeking approval. It was time to write my own story. The coffee shop was quiet for a Tuesday afternoon. I'd chosen it specifically because it was 3 blocks from the office, far enough that my mother wouldn't think to look for me here. After a week of dodging her calls and focusing on work, I'd finally agreed to meet my father. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups. "I remembered you liked caramel macchiatos," he said as I sat down. "At least you did when you were 12. "I still do," I replied, surprised he remembered such a detail, though these days I usually need something stronger. "Like the whiskey you keep in your office drawer." When I raised my eyebrows, he smiled. "I did my homework before taking the CEO position. Your project files are impressive." "Is that why you're here?" I asked, wrapping my hands around the warm cup. "To discuss work?" He sighed, pulling an old leather briefcase onto his lap. "No, I'm here because I owe you 20 years of explanations. Mother said you left us for your career, that you chose success over family." "Is that what Tiffany told you?" He pulled out a stack of envelopes, all unopened, all addressed to me. "These are just some of the letters I sent, birthday cards, Christmas cards, graduation congratulations, all returned unopened." My hands shook as I picked up the top envelope, my 13th birthday card, marked "Return to Sender," in my mother's distinctive handwriting. I never stopped trying to reach you, Willow. Your mother made sure I couldn't. She said you stopped paying child support. He pulled out another folder. Bank statements, every month without fail. She returned those checks too, but I kept depositing them into a separate account. For you. My coffee sat untouched, growing cold. Why are you showing me this now? Because you're old enough to handle the truth, and because I watched you stand up to her at that party. You're stronger than you know, Willow. Stronger because I had to be, I shot back. Do you know what it's like growing up with her? Everything I did was wrong. Every choice I made was a disappointment. I know, he said quietly. I married her, remember? That's why I fought so hard for custody. That stopped me cold. You what? Your mother didn't tell you about the custody battle? I spent 2 years and every penny I had trying to get custody of you. She convinced the judge I was an unfit parent because I worked too much. The irony wasn't lost on me. While she spent every day telling me I worked too much, she's always been good at twisting things to fit her narrative. He pulled out one final envelope, this one new. This contains everything: court documents, letters, photos, things you should have seen years ago. I stared at the envelope but didn't take it. Why didn't you try harder? Why didn't you just show up at my school, my graduation? I did. His voice cracked. Your mother had a restraining order, said I was harassing her. The one time I got close enough to talk to you, at your high school graduation, she had me arrested. The memory hit me like a punch to the gut. The crazy man security had tackled during the ceremony. I'd barely glimpsed him. I watched from a distance, he continued. Saw you graduate college. Saw your first patent announcement. I kept every newspaper clipping about your achievements. Stop, I whispered. Just stop. My head was spinning with revelations, each one rewriting my childhood memories. I'm not telling you this to hurt you, Willow, or to turn you against your mother. I'm telling you because you deserve to know the truth. The truth? I laughed bitterly. The truth is, you're my boss now. How do I know this isn't some corporate manipulation? Because I turned down this job twice before accepting it, he replied. I only said yes when they mentioned you were on the board. It was my chance to finally be in your life again. My phone buzzed. Another message from my mother. I turned it face down without reading it. Take the envelope, he said gently. Read it when you're ready, or don't. It's your choice now. But know this, I never stopped loving you, and I never stopped being proud of you. I reached for the envelope with trembling fingers. I need time. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere this time. He stood up, then hesitated. One more thing. That sustainable energy project you're leading, it's brilliant. And it's all you, not your mother's influence, not my genes. Just you. As he walked away, I sat there holding the envelope that contained my real childhood, not the version I'd been fed. My phone buzzed again. This time I looked at it. Mother, we need to talk about your father's lies. Come home now. I typed back a response I'd waited 20 years to send. No. Then I picked up the envelope and walked out, leaving both my cold coffee and my mother's demands behind. It was time to discover who I really was, beyond the lies and manipulation. And for once, I wasn't afraid of what I might find. The projections don't lie, Willow, Zoe said, pointing at my computer screen. The sustainable energy project is falling behind schedule. I rubbed my temples, fighting a headache. 3 days had passed since meeting my father, and the envelope still sat unopened in my desk drawer, taunting me. We need to recalculate the power-output ratios. Something's off in the baseline measurements. You've been distracted, she said gently. Maybe we should... The door burst open, and my mother strode in like she owned the place. How she'd gotten past security, I couldn't imagine. 3 days of ignored calls, she announced. Is this how you treat your mother? Zoe straightened. I'll give you two some privacy. No, I said firmly. Stay. We have work to do, and Mother was just leaving. Leaving? She laughed that familiar, cutting laugh. I drove 2 hours to get here. We need to discuss your father's ridiculous claims. Claims? I pulled open my drawer and took out the envelope. You mean these court documents? The restraining order? The returned letters? Her face paled slightly. He showed you those? Typical Dominic, trying to poison you against me. The only poison here came from you, I said, standing up. 20 years of lies, Mother. 20 years of making me believe I wasn't good enough. Everything I did was to protect you. She slammed her hand on my desk. He would have ruined you like he ruined me. Mrs. Bryant, Zoe interjected, this is a place of business. If you can't lower your voice. Stay out of this, my mother snapped. This is family business. I walked to my wall, where my engineering degree hung proudly. You see this, Mother? The degree you said would lead nowhere. The career you said was beneath me. I took it down and held it out to her. This is who I am. Not the lawyer you wanted, not the socialite you tried to create. Me. I gave you everything, she hissed. Every advantage, every opportunity. You gave me trauma, I cut in. You gave me self-doubt. You gave me years of therapy bills. A knock at the door interrupted us. Milena from HR stood there, security guards flanking her. Is everything all right? We heard shouting. Everything's fine, I said calmly. My mother was just leaving. Like hell I am. You ungrateful. The security guard stepped forward, but I held up my hand. Mother, you have two choices. Leave voluntarily, or be escorted out and banned from the building. Your decision. She stared at me, and for the first time, I saw something new in her eyes. Fear. Not of the security guards, but of me. Of the power I'd found. You sound just like him, she whispered. No, I replied. I sound like me. The me you tried to suppress for 20 years. She grabbed her purse, hands shaking. This isn't over, Willow. You need me. You've always needed me. The only thing I need is for you to leave. After she stormed out, Milena approached my desk. Do you want to press charges for trespassing? I shook my head. Just make sure she's on the restricted access list. Already done. Milena smiled sympathetically. Your father asked me to give you this, by the way. She handed me a file. It's the original patent for the Sustainable Energy Project. He thought it might help with your calculations. I opened the file, scanning the technical drawings. There, in the margins, were handwritten notes addressing exactly the power output issues we'd been struggling with. He's been following my work, I murmured. For years, apparently, Milena replied. He has quite a collection of your publications in his office. After everyone left, Zoe stayed behind. You okay? I looked at the degree still in my hands, then at the patent file my father had sent. You know what? I actually am. For the first time in my life, I feel clear. What are you going to do about your mother? I hung the degree back on my wall, straightening it carefully. Nothing. She made her choices. Now I'm making mine. And the envelope? Zoe nodded toward my drawer. I think it's time to read it. I pulled it out and broke the seal. Want to grab dinner and help me through this? Only if you're buying, she grinned. And only if you let me call Dylan to join us. He's been worried about you. I gathered my things, including both the envelope and my father's patent file. Deal. But first, let's fix these calculations. I have a project to save and a point to prove. To your mother? No, I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. To myself. As we dove back into the technical problems, I realized something profound. My mother's dramatic entrance hadn't shaken me like it used to. Her words didn't cut as deep. The little girl desperate for approval was gone, replaced by a woman who finally understood her own worth. The real work, both with the project and my family drama, was just beginning. But for the first time, I was ready to face it all head-on, without fear or doubt. After all, I was an engineer. Solving complex problems was what I did best. Dylan's small art studio provided the perfect sanctuary for reading my father's letter. The smell of paint and canvas somehow made everything feel less intense. Zoe sat cross-legged on the worn leather couch, while Dylan worked quietly at his easel, occasionally glancing over with concern. You don't have to do this tonight, Zoe said softly. Yes, I do. I pulled out the first document, a yellowed letter dated 20 years ago. Dear Willow, I read aloud, my voice shaking. I'm writing this letter, knowing your mother will probably never let you read it. Today, the judge granted her full custody, despite everything I tried to prove. Dylan set down his paintbrush. Do you want me to read it? I handed him the letter, unable to continue. He cleared his throat and began reading. The judge believed your mother's claims that my work schedule made me an unfit parent. What they didn't see were the times I changed my entire career path trying to get more time with you. The consulting job I took so I could work from home. The promotions I turned down that would have required travel. Zoe squeezed my hand as Dylan continued. Your mother told the court I was obsessed with my career, that I chose work over family. The truth is, I chose every job based on how it would affect my time with you. But she had a way of twisting everything I did into something sinister. The next document was a bank statement, 20 years of child support payments, each one returned uncashed. Below that, statements from a separate account, my account, growing steadily with each deposit he'd made anyway. There's enough here to buy a house, I whispered, staring at the final balance. Keep reading, Zoe urged gently. The next papers were newspaper clippings. My high school robotics competition win, my college graduation, my first patent announcement, each one carefully preserved, some with coffee stains suggesting they'd been read multiple times. Then came the photos. Me at 12, playing with a science kit, taken from a distance. Me at 16, receiving an award, shot from the back of the auditorium. Me at 21 in my graduation gown, photographed through a car window. He was there, I said, my voice breaking. He was always there. Look at this one, Dylan said, pulling out a newspaper clipping. It showed me giving a presentation at an engineering conference 3 years ago. In the background, barely visible, was my father, sitting in the last row. My phone rang, making us all jump. My mother's name flashed on the screen. Don't answer it, Zoe warned. But I did, putting it on speaker. What do you want, Mother? I just left your father's office, she said, her voice unsteady. He showed me everything, Willow. Everything. And I made mistakes. But you have to understand. Understand what? I interrupted. That you deliberately kept me from my father. That you returned every letter, every gift, every attempt he made to be in my life. I was protecting you. From what? I demanded. From having a father who loved me, from knowing that someone believed in my choices. He would have turned you against me, she said, her voice small. Like he's doing now. No, Mother, you did that all on your own. I looked at the photos spread across Dylan's studio floor. Every time you told me I wasn't good enough, every time you dismissed my achievements, every time you tried to force me to be someone I'm not. Please, she whispered, please don't do this. Do what? Tell the truth? That's rich coming from you. Dylan moved to my side, his hand warm on my shoulder. I drew strength from his presence. I'm not the villain here, my mother protested. Everything I did was for you, I finished. It was always for you. Your reputation, your plans, your control. Never for me. The line went quiet for a long moment. Then, what do you want from me, Willow? Nothing, I replied. For the first time in my life, I want absolutely nothing from you. I ended the call and let the phone drop onto the scattered papers. Zoe immediately pulled me into a hug, while Dylan wrapped his arms around us both. You did good, kid, Zoe murmured. Look, Dylan said suddenly, turning his easel toward us. He'd been painting while I read. A portrait of me surrounded by scattered letters and photos, but with light breaking through the chaos. Somehow he'd captured exactly how I felt. Broken but healing, lost but finding my way. It's perfect, I whispered. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. I hope you found what you needed in those papers. My door is always open when you're ready. I looked at the painting, at my friends, at the evidence of a father's love scattered around us. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe fully, like a weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it was there had finally lifted. I think, I said slowly, I'm ready now. The board meeting starts in 10 minutes, Zoe announced, poking her head into my office. You ready for this? I adjusted my blazer, checking my reflection in the window. Ready as I'll ever be. The past week had been a whirlwind of preparation. The sustainable energy project was back on track, thanks to my father's notes and countless late nights with Zoe. Now we had to present our progress to the board. Hold up, Zoe said, stepping into my office. Your mother's in the lobby again. My stomach clenched. Milena banned her. She's claiming medical emergency, says she needs to see you immediately. Of course she does. I grabbed my presentation materials. Tell security to escort her out. I'm done with her emergencies. We headed toward the boardroom, but Milena intercepted us in the hallway. Willow, got a minute? The meeting. Can wait 5 minutes. Your father already knows we'll be slightly delayed. She pulled me into a nearby conference room, Zoe following. What's going on? Milena's face was serious. Your mother's been calling board members, trying to convince them you're emotionally unstable and unfit for your position. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Seriously, that's her play. She's desperate, Zoe said. You took away her control, so she's trying to hurt you the only way she can. Unfortunately, Milena continued, one board member seems sympathetic to her. Marcus is questioning whether family drama might affect your judgment. Marcus? I shook my head. He's been against me since day one. This just gives him an excuse. Which is why we need to handle this carefully, Milena said. Your presentation today needs to be flawless. My phone buzzed. A text from Dylan. Your mother just showed up at my studio. Says she has proof you're having a breakdown. She's everywhere, I muttered, showing them the message. No, Zoe said firmly. She's nowhere. She's just making noise because she's losing. Focus on what matters. The project, the presentation, your future. A knock at the door made us all turn. My father stood there, looking concerned. Everything okay? The board's waiting. I straightened my shoulders. Everything's fine, just dealing with some last-minute complications. Your mother? He asked knowingly. She's trying to convince the board I'm unstable, I said, watching his reaction. His face darkened. She used the same tactics during our custody battle. Claimed I was mentally unfit because I kept fighting for you. He stepped into the room, closing the door. But we're not going to let her win this time. We? I asked. Yes, we. Milena's documented every attempt your mother's made to interfere with company business. Zoe has records of your project's progress and your leadership. And he smiled slightly. I have 20 years of evidence showing exactly who the unstable one is. The board meeting, I started. Can wait 10 more minutes, he said. Right now, we're going to plan how to handle this properly. For the next few minutes, we strategized. Milena would present the documentation of my mother's harassment. Zoe would handle the technical presentation, demonstrating my clear-headed leadership. And I would... Just be yourself, my father said. Show them the brilliant, composed engineer I've watched from afar all these years. When we finally entered the boardroom, Marcus immediately spoke up. This delay is unprofessional. Actually, Milena cut in smoothly, we were just reviewing some concerning attempts to interfere with company operations. She began distributing folders to each board member. I took my place at the front of the room, Zoe beside me with our presentation materials. As the board members opened their folders, their expressions shifted from annoyance to concern. These allegations, Marcus began, but my father cut him off, are fully documented and verified. Now, shall we proceed with the project update? For the next hour, Zoe and I presented our findings. The power output issues had been resolved, the timeline was back on track, and our projected savings had actually increased. I answered every question with confidence, my voice never wavering. As we concluded, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Dylan. Your mother's gone, but she left something you should see. Come by the studio after work. Any other questions? I asked the board, ignoring the message for now. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. I may have been hasty in my concerns about your stability. Thank you, Marcus, I replied professionally. I understand how family drama might appear to affect one's judgment. Fortunately, I learned long ago to separate personal issues from professional responsibilities. After the meeting, my father caught up with me in the hallway. That was impressive. I had good help, I said, glancing at Zoe and Milena, who were chatting nearby. No, he shook his head. That was all you. You're stronger than she ever gave you credit for, stronger than I even imagined. My phone buzzed again. Dylan. It's important. Trust me. Excuse me, I said to my father. I need to go see what new drama my mother's created. He touched my arm gently. Whatever it is, remember, you're not alone this time. I nodded, feeling oddly peaceful despite the chaos. My mother might be everywhere, but for the first time, I had people in my corner. Real people who supported me for who I was, not who they wanted me to be. Dylan's studio was filled with the golden light of sunset when I arrived. He was standing in front of a large canvas, but it wasn't his usual artwork that caught my attention. It was the old shoebox sitting on his work table. Your mother dropped this off, he said quietly. Said it was time you saw the whole truth. I approached the box cautiously, as if it might bite. Did you look inside? No, but... He hesitated. She was crying, Will. Real tears, not her usual dramatic performance. I lifted the lid. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, from before I was born. My mother and father, young and laughing, their wedding day, holidays together. They looked happy. There's more, Dylan said, pointing to an envelope at the bottom. The envelope contained medical records, psychiatric evaluations, prescriptions, all with my mother's name. Postpartum depression, I read aloud, severe anxiety disorder, paranoid tendencies. My hands shook as I turned the pages. These are dated from right after I was born. Keep reading, Dylan urged gently. Treatment recommendations, therapy sessions, medications prescribed but never taken. A pattern emerged, my mother repeatedly refusing help, convinced everyone was against her. She was sick, I whispered. All this time. Willow. My father's voice made me jump. He stood in the doorway looking uncertain. Dylan called me. I thought you should hear this part from me. I gestured to the medical records. Did you know? He entered the studio slowly, like he was approaching a wounded animal. I tried to get her help. That's what really caused our separation. Not work, not another woman. She became convinced I was trying to prove she was an unfit mother. But you never told me. How could I? He ran a hand through his grey hair. You were 12 when she won custody. Telling you your mother was mentally ill would have only made things worse. Dylan quietly moved to his easel, giving us space while pretending to paint. The control, the manipulation, I said, pieces falling into place. It was all because she was sick. Part of it, my father nodded, but being sick doesn't excuse what she did to you. She refused treatment, refused help. That was her choice. I picked up a photo of the three of us. Christmas morning, me probably around 2 years old. We looked like a normal, happy family. She's getting worse, my father said softly. The calls to board members, showing up everywhere, trying to destroy what you've built. She's spiraling. What am I supposed to do with this? I asked, my voice cracking. How am I supposed to hate her now? You don't have to hate her, Dylan spoke up from his easel. But you don't have to forgive her either. My father stepped closer. There's something else you should know. The company's mental health program. I implemented it last week. Full coverage, complete confidentiality. If she ever decides to get help. You did that for her? I did it for everyone, he corrected. But yes, I made sure it would cover family members of employees. A knock at the studio door made us all turn. Zoe stood there, slightly out of breath. Your mother's at the office again. She's demanding to see both of you. No, I said firmly. Not like this. Not on her terms. My father nodded. What do you want to do? I looked at the medical records, then at the happy family photos. I want to do this right. Zoe, call Milena. Tell her to set up a meeting, neutral ground, with a counselor present. Already done, Zoe smiled. Milena suggested the company's new mental health center. Tomorrow morning. I turned to my father. Will you be there? If you want me to be. I do. I gathered the medical records and photos, putting them back in the shoebox. But first, I need you to tell me everything. No more secrets, no more protected truths. I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Dylan cleared his throat. I'll make coffee. Looks like it's going to be a long night. As Dylan and Zoe moved around the studio, giving us space while staying close for support, my father and I sat down to talk. Really talk, for the first time in 20 years. Start from the beginning, I said. Tell me about the woman in these photos. Tell me about the mother I never knew. He picked up the wedding photo, touching my mother's smiling face gently. She was brilliant, beautiful, and so full of life. And then something broke, and she couldn't admit it needed fixing. Outside, the sun had set completely, but Dylan's studio lights created a warm, safe bubble around us. As my father began to tell our family's true story, I realized that understanding didn't mean forgiving, and knowing the reasons didn't erase the pain. But maybe, just maybe, it was a start towards something better, or at least something honest. The mental health center's family counseling room felt too bright, too sterile. My mother sat across from me, her perfect posture and manicured nails at odds with her red-rimmed eyes. My father sat between us, a physical buffer in this emotional minefield. Dr. Sarah, the counselor, spoke first. Thank you all for coming. Shall we begin? This is ridiculous, my mother said, but her voice lacked its usual bite. We don't need a stranger involved in family matters. Family matters? I couldn't help but laugh. Like when you involved the entire board in your campaign to discredit me. I was protecting you. Mrs. Bryant, Dr. Sarah interjected calmly, why don't you explain what protection means to you? My mother's hands trembled as she reached for her purse, pulling out a familiar photograph, the same Christmas morning shot I'd seen in the shoebox. Look at us, she said softly. We were happy, perfect. Then he started working late, missing dinners, prioritizing his career. I was working late because you were becoming unstable, my father cut in. The medical bills. I wasn't unstable, she snapped. You just wanted everyone to think I was. Mother, I leaned forward, pushing the medical records across the table. It's all here. The diagnoses, the refused treatments. You needed help. Help? She laughed that hollow laugh I knew so well. I needed my husband to choose his family. I needed my daughter to follow the path I knew would keep her safe. Safe from what? I demanded. From ending up like him. She pointed at my father. Consumed by work, missing life, losing everything that matters. Dr. Sarah spoke again. Tiffany, it sounds like you're describing your own fears, not Willow's reality. You don't understand, my mother whispered. None of you understand. Then help us understand, I said. Help me understand why you returned every letter, every gift. Why you told me he abandoned us when he was fighting to be in my life. Because he would have taken you away. Tears spilled down her cheeks, smearing her perfect makeup. Just like he tried to take you when you were little, claiming I was unfit, trying to force me into therapy, into taking pills that would make me into someone else. My father's voice was gentle. The pills would have helped you, Tiffany. The therapy would have given you tools to cope. I didn't need tools, she shouted. I needed control. Don't you see? Everything was spinning, falling apart. Control was the only thing keeping me sane. And now, Dr. Sarah asked, what's keeping you sane now? My mother looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. Nothing, she whispered. I've lost control of everything. My daughter hates me. My ex-husband is her boss. All my careful plans. I don't hate you, I said quietly. I hate what you did. I hate the lies, the manipulation, the way you made me doubt myself. But I don't hate you. Willow. She reached for my hand, but I pulled back. No, Mother. Listen to me. I'm not that scared little girl anymore. I'm not your puppet or your project or your second chance. I'm an engineer, a board member, and a grown woman who's done letting you control her life. But I'm your mother. Yes, you are, and you're sick. You have been for a long time. But being sick isn't an excuse anymore. My father cleared his throat. The company's health plan, Tiffany. Full coverage for mental health services. No questions asked, complete confidentiality. She stared at him. You did that for me? For everyone, he said. But yes, with you in mind. Dr. Sarah leaned forward. Tiffany, accepting help isn't losing control. Sometimes it's the strongest form of taking control. My mother's hands shook as she picked up the medical records. And if I get help, what then? Then we take it one day at a time, I said. No promises, no guarantees, just honest efforts and real change. I don't know how to be any other way, she admitted. That's what therapy is for, Dr. Sarah said gently. Shall we schedule your first individual session? My mother looked at me, then at my father, then back at the Christmas photo in her hands. Will you? She swallowed hard. Will you come with me? Just the first time? I exchanged glances with my father. He nodded slightly. Yes, I said. We'll come. But after that, you have to do the work yourself. She nodded, tears flowing freely now. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know it's not enough, but I am sorry. I know, I replied, standing up. But sorry isn't what I need from you right now. I need you to get help, real help. As we left the counseling room, my father squeezed my shoulder. You did good, kiddo. We'll see, I said, watching my mother schedule her first therapy appointment with trembling fingers. We'll see. The Sustainable Energy Project launch party felt different from my promotion celebration. No flying champagne glasses, no dramatic scenes, just genuine achievement and quiet pride. I stood at the podium, looking out at the faces before me. When we started this project, I began, many said it couldn't be done, that the power output ratios were impossible to balance, that the cost would outweigh the benefits. I paused, finding Zoe's encouraging smile in the crowd. They were wrong. The presentation screen behind me showed the final numbers. Millions in savings, unprecedented efficiency ratings, and most importantly, a significant reduction in environmental impact. But this success isn't just about numbers, I continued. It's about people, about trust, collaboration, and believing in something bigger than ourselves. My father sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Next to him, in a simple black dress that would have seemed plain by her old standards, sat my mother. 3 months of intensive therapy had softened her edges, though her hands still fidgeted with nervous energy. I'd like to thank my team, especially Zoe, who never lost faith. I took a deep breath. And my family, who taught me that sometimes the hardest engineering problems aren't technical at all, they're human. After the applause and congratulations, I found Dylan by the refreshment table sketching on a napkin. Still working on that portrait? I asked, peeking at his drawing. Almost done. He showed me the nearly completed canvas on his phone, my presentation moment captured in oils and emotion. Though your mother keeps asking me to make her look younger, I laughed. Some things never change. But some things do, he said, nodding toward where my parents stood, actually having a civil conversation with Edwin and Milena. Willow, my mother's voice called out, lacking its former sharp command. Come here, darling. Edwin was just telling us about your first interview. I approached cautiously, still not entirely trusting these moments of normalcy. I was saying, Edwin continued, how you showed up with that prototype you'd built in your garage, determined to prove yourself on merit alone. She gets that from me, my father said proudly. My mother tensed slightly, but then did something that surprised me. She laughed. Actually, that determination is all her own. We just had to learn to stop standing in her way. Speaking of not standing in the way, Milena interjected smoothly, the board was very impressed with the project results, Willow. There's talk of expanding it globally. Really? I turned to my father. You didn't mention that. He shrugged. Wanted it to be a surprise, though you'll have to travel for the implementations. I waited for my mother's reaction. The old her would have protested, tried to control the situation. Instead, she touched my arm gently. When do you leave? She asked quietly. Not for a few months, I replied. Still lots of planning to do. Good. She straightened my jacket collar. A familiar gesture, but without the usual criticism. That gives me time to work on, being okay with not being in control. How's that going? I asked carefully. Dr. Sarah says I'm making progress. She smiled wryly, though I still hate those group therapy sessions. But you're going, my father pointed out. Yes, well, she glanced at me. Some things are worth the discomfort. Zoe appeared with champagne flutes, real ones this time, not the crystals my mother used to prefer. Toast to the project lead. As everyone raised their glasses, I looked around at this unlikely gathering. My father, back in my life and proving to be the mentor I'd always needed. My mother, fighting her demons one therapy session at a time. Dylan capturing our story in art. Zoe, my unwavering support. Edwin, Milena, family chosen rather than born to. Actually, I said, raising my glass, I'd like to toast to something else. To engineering problems of all kinds, technical and emotional. To solutions that require more than calculations. And to the courage to rebuild what's broken, even when the blueprints aren't clear. To courage, my mother echoed softly, her hand finding mine. Later, as the party wound down, I found myself alone with my father in my office, looking at the city lights below. You know, he said, I always dreamed of working with you like this. I just never imagined that it would take 20 years and a corporate crisis, he chuckled, that you would exceed every dream I had for you. My mother's voice came from the doorway. She exceeded both our dreams, even the misguided ones. We stood there, the three of us, not quite healed but no longer broken. Not quite a normal family, but maybe something better, a work in progress, with all of us holding the tools to build something new. Ready to go home? Dylan asked, appearing with his portfolio and my coat. I looked at my parents, at my office, at the life I'd built despite and because of everything. Yes, I said, feeling the truth of it deep in my bones. I'm ready.
The sound of shattering glass echoes through my boutique as Isabella hurls another designer handbag across the stockroom. I close my eyes and count to 10, reminding myself that I didn't spend 15 years building this business from nothing, just to let my stepdaughter destroy it in 15 minutes. This collection is garbage, Isabella announces, her perfectly manicured hand waving dismissively at the carefully curated spring line I'd spent months sourcing. Daddy's friends wouldn't be caught dead carrying these. I'm Talia, and 6 months ago, I made what I'm starting to think might be the biggest mistake of my life. I married into the McCormick family. Don't get me wrong, I love Reed. He's everything I could want in a husband. It's his daughter who's making me question everything. Those bags are handcrafted by artisans in Italy, I explain, keeping my voice steady. They're exclusive pieces that, whatever. Isabella cuts me off, pulling out her phone. I need $50,000 for the wedding florist. Harold says we absolutely must have imported peonies for the centerpieces. My stomach drops. $50,000? For flowers? Don't be so provincial, Talia. She rolls her eyes, already tapping away at her screen. I've already told Harold yes. Just transfer the money to my account like usual. Like usual. As if my boutique is her personal ATM. I think about the long nights I spent sleeping on a cot in this very stockroom, saving every penny to keep my dream alive. About the time I lived on ramen noodles for 3 months straight to make payroll during the recession. Isabella, we need to talk about your spending. I start, but she's already heading for the door, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floors. Oh my God, you sound just like my last stepmother. She pauses at the threshold, throwing me a look that could freeze hell. And we both know how that ended. The bell above the door chimes as she exits, leaving me alone with the mess she's made. I pull out my phone and dial Penny's number. Let me guess, my best friend answers on the first ring. Hurricane Isabella just blew through? She wants 50 grand for wedding flowers. I sink into my office chair, surveying the damage. That's on top of the 100,000 she's already blown through this month. Girl, you need to tell Reed, Penny says. This is getting out of control. I've tried. I massage my temples, feeling a headache coming on. He just says she's stressed about the wedding and to let her have this moment. Her moment doesn't need to bankrupt you, Penny points out. What does Noah think about all this? My brother's voice echoes in my head from our conversation last week. You're too soft, Tal. She's walking all over you because you let her. Before I can respond, my office door opens and Reed walks in, looking handsome in his tailored suit. My heart still skips a beat when I see him, even after everything. There's my beautiful wife, he says, leaning down to kiss me. His smile fades when he sees my expression. What's wrong? Isabella was just here, I begin carefully. Reed, we need to discuss. His phone buzzes, and he holds up a finger. Sorry, honey, I need to take this. But listen, Isabella mentioned something about wedding flowers. Just handle it, okay? Whatever she needs, I'll make it up to you. He's gone before I can protest, leaving behind only the lingering scent of his expensive cologne. I stare at the broken glass on the floor, at the scattered inventory that represents thousands in potential profits, and something inside me shifts. My phone pings with a notification. It's an email from Isabella to Harold, the wedding planner, CCing me on the payment details for the flowers. The amount has somehow grown to 75,000. That's it, I mutter, opening my laptop. Time to see exactly where my money's been going these past few months. Penny's voice comes through the phone I'd forgotten was still connected. Tal, you still there? Yeah, I reply, fingers flying over the keyboard as I access the boutique's accounts. But I'm done playing nice stepmommy. If Isabella wants to treat my life's work like her personal piggy bank, she's about to learn what happens when you break things that don't belong to you. What are you going to do? I pause, watching as the transaction history loads on my screen. I'm going to give her exactly the wedding she deserves. Another email notification pops up. Isabella demanding I process the payment immediately. I click delete and smile for the first time today. She has no idea what's coming. The numbers on my screen don't lie, but I check them again anyway. $250,000 in unauthorized transfers over the past 3 months. My hands shake as I scroll through the transactions, each one like a knife in my gut. You need to see this, I tell Noah over the phone. Can you come by the boutique? 20 minutes later, my brother's examining my laptop screen. His usual easy smile, replaced by a deep frown. She's forging your signature on these transfers, Tal. That's straight up fraud. I know. I pull up another document. Look at this email chain. She's been corresponding with vendors using my business email account, authorizing payments I never approved. Noah whistles low. Does Reed know? Before I can answer, the boutique's front door chimes. Isabella saunters in, followed by her friend Skylar. They're giggling about something until Isabella spots me behind the counter. Finally, I've been trying to reach you all morning, Isabella says, her voice sharp. The flower payment still hasn't gone through. That's because I didn't approve it, I reply, standing straighter. We need to talk about these unauthorized transfers, Isabella. Skylar's eyes widen, and she takes a small step back. Maybe I should wait outside. No, stay, Isabella commands, then turns to me. What unauthorized transfers? Daddy said I could use the boutique account for wedding expenses. Reed said you could use some funds, within reason, I correct her. Not empty out my business accounts. Isabella laughs. But there's no humor in it. Your business accounts. Last I checked, you married into our family. Everything here is technically Daddy's anyway. Noah steps forward, his presence solid and reassuring beside me. That's not how it works, Isabella. The boutique belongs to Talia. She built it before she met your father, And who are you supposed to be? Isabella sneers. I'm her brother, and I'm also a financial advisor who knows fraud when he sees it. Isabella's perfectly composed face cracks for just a second. Fear flickers in her eyes before she masks it with contempt. Whatever, I'm calling Daddy. She pulls out her phone, manicured nails clicking against the screen. Go ahead, I say quietly. While you're at it, explain why you've been forging my signature and accessing accounts you're not authorized to use. Skylar gasps. Bella, you said Talia was handling all the payments. Shut up, Sky. Isabella snaps, then forces a smile as she puts the phone to her ear. Daddy, you need to come to the boutique right now. Talia's being impossible about the wedding expenses. 20 tense minutes later, Reed arrives, looking harried. What's going on? I was in the middle of a meeting. Show him, Noah tells me. I turn my laptop around. Reed, look at these transactions. She's trying to ruin my wedding. Isabella cuts in, tears suddenly streaming down her face. She's always been jealous of me, of our family's position. Now she's making up lies about me stealing. Making up lies. I pull up the email chain. Here's you impersonating me to vendors. Here's a forged signature on a bank transfer. Here's... Enough, Reed raises his hands. Isabella, is this true? Daddy, please, she sobs. You said I could use the money. I said you could have reasonable wedding expenses covered. Reed's voice is dangerously quiet. Not commit fraud. I think, Noah interjects, we should all sit down with the accountants and go through these transactions in detail. Isabella's tears dry up instantly. This is ridiculous. I'm leaving. No, you're not, Reed says firmly. You're going to sit down right now and explain exactly what you've done. Fine, Isabella shouts, mask finally cracking completely. You want to know what I did? I took what I deserved. What's a few $100,000 to this family anyway? Daddy spends that much on a weekend in Vegas. The boutique falls silent. Skylar looks mortified. Noah shakes his head. Reed's face has gone pale. I think, I say into the silence, we should continue this discussion at the house, with our lawyers present. Isabella's laugh turns hysterical. Lawyers, really? You're going to sue me, your precious stepdaughter, over a few wedding expenses? I meet her eyes steadily. No, Isabella, I'm going to hold you accountable, maybe for the first time in your life. She grabs her purse and storms toward the door, pausing only to spit out, you'll regret this. Nobody comes between me and my wedding. Nobody. As the door slams behind her, I notice an email notification pop up on my screen. It's from Isabella to Harold, the wedding planner, sent just minutes ago. Proceed with everything as planned. I don't care what it costs. Someone will pay for it all one way or another. I forward the email to my lawyer, then look at Reed. We need to talk. You're not actually going through with this, are you? Penny asks, watching me sort through the stack of financial documents spread across my dining room table. The wedding's in 3 days. That's exactly why I have to do it now. I hold up a bank statement covered in highlighted transactions. Look at this. She's even billing personal shopping sprees as wedding decorations. Noah enters with his laptop, setting it beside the papers. I've got something you need to see, Tal. He pulls up a video file. Security footage from the boutique. Watch this. The grainy footage shows Isabella entering, after hours, using a key she shouldn't have. She goes straight to my office, sits at my computer, and starts typing. When was this? I lean closer to the screen. Last week, I had the IT guy check your computer logs. She's been accessing your email, sending authorizations to vendors, and deleting the records. Penny whistles. That's next level crazy. My phone buzzes. A text from Reed. Can we talk? Isabella's devastated. Devastated, I read aloud, laughing without humor. She's devastated that she got caught, maybe. What did Reed say when you showed him everything? Penny asks. He's in denial. Keeps saying there must be some misunderstanding. I start typing a response, but delete it. He's at Isabella's place now, probably letting her manipulate him again. Noah closes his laptop. You know what you have to do, sis. The video presentation at the reception. I nod. Everything's ready? Almost. Just need to add this new footage. The doorbell rings, making us all jump. Through the window, I spot Melina, Reed's sister, standing on the porch. I open the door, and she rushes in without waiting for an invitation. You won't believe what I just heard, she says, dropping her designer bag on the table. I was at the country club with Skylar, and she told me Isabella's been lying to everyone about the wedding budget. What do you mean? I ask. She's been telling Thomas's family that you and Reed are paying for everything because you insisted. That it's your wedding gift to them. Melina's eyes flash with anger. She's made you look like some desperate stepmother trying to buy her way into the family. My hands clench into fists. Of course she has. There's more, Melina continues. She's been spreading rumors that you're jealous of her relationship with Reed, that you're trying to come between them. Noah stands up. That's it. We're showing the video at the reception. No, Penny interrupts. You need to stop this before the wedding. Think about Thomas. He doesn't deserve to be humiliated in front of everyone. Thomas needs to see who he's really marrying. I counter. And everyone else needs to see who Isabella really is. My phone buzzes again. Another text from Reed. Coming home. We need to talk. He's going to try to talk you out of this, Melina warns. Isabella's got him wrapped around her finger. Not this time, I say, gathering the documents. Noah, finish the video. Penny, I need you to. The front door opens, and Reed walks in. He stops short at the sight of all of us. Family meeting, he asks, attempting a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Just going over some interesting financial records, I reply. Want to join us? He sighs, loosening his tie. Talia, honey, I know Isabella made some mistakes, but she's agreed to pay everything back. Can't we just move past this? Move past this, Melina stands up. Reed, your daughter committed fraud. She's been lying to everyone, including Thomas's family. She's young, Reed protests weakly. She got carried away with the wedding planning. She's 28 years old, I say, my voice steady. And this isn't about the money anymore. This is about consequences. What are you planning? He looks at the papers, the laptop, our faces. The truth, I answer simply. Everyone's going to know the truth. You'll destroy her, Reed says quietly. No, I correct him. She destroyed herself. I'm just making sure she can't destroy anyone else. My phone pings with an email notification. It's from Harold, the wedding planner, forwarding a message from Isabella. Don't worry about the budget anymore. I've taken care of everything. Talia won't be a problem after tomorrow. I show the email to Reed. His face pales as he reads it. Still want to defend her? I ask. He sinks into a chair, suddenly looking older than his years. Do what you have to do, he says finally. Just make it quick. I nod to Noah, who opens his laptop again. Let's finish this video. As we work, another email arrives, this time from Thomas's mother, thanking me profusely for my generous gift of paying for the entire wedding. Attached is a screenshot of a message from Isabella, claiming it was all Talia's idea. I add it to our evidence. 3 days until the wedding, and Isabella has no idea what's coming. The church is a masterpiece of white flowers and crystal decorations, exactly what you'd expect from a wedding that supposedly cost close to $500,000. I sit in the third row, watching Isabella float down the aisle in her designer gown, looking every bit the innocent bride. You okay? Penny whispers beside me. I nod slightly, feeling the USB drive in my clutch like a loaded weapon. The video is ready. Noah checked it 3 times this morning. Thomas stands at the altar, beaming at his bride with complete adoration. My stomach twists. He has no idea that the woman he's about to marry used stolen money to create this fairy tale. If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. Penny squeezes my hand. We both stay silent. This isn't the time. Not yet. After the ceremony, I find Reed in the church vestibule. He hasn't spoken more than 2 words to me since yesterday. Last chance to stop this, he says quietly. Last chance for Isabella to come clean, I counter. He runs a hand through his silver hair. I talked to her again this morning. She swears she'll pay everything back. With what money, Reed? The money she's still stealing from my business. Before he can respond, Harold approaches us, tablet in hand. Talia, I just wanted to thank you again for being so generous with the budget. The reception venue looks absolutely stunning. I force a smile. I'm sure it does, Harold. Every penny well spent, right? He beams, oblivious to the tension. Isabella said you insisted on sparing no expense. Such a wonderful stepmother you are. As Harold walks away, Reed won't meet my eyes. Maybe she really does feel guilty, he suggests weakly. Let's find out. I head for the church exit, where limousines wait to take us to the reception. The grand ballroom of the country club is even more extravagant than the church. Crystal chandeliers sparkle above tables laden with imported flowers and custom place settings. A string quartet plays softly in the corner. Everything's set, Noah murmurs as he passes by. Videos queued up for right after the father-daughter dance. I spot Isabella holding court with her bridesmaids, Skylar among them. They're all laughing about something until Isabella sees me watching. She excuses herself and sachets over, enjoying the wedding, Talia. Her smile is pure venom. I hope you're taking notes. This is how real society events are done, not like those little boutique parties you throw. It's certainly impressive, I agree. I especially like all the personal touches you've added with my money. Her smile doesn't waver. Careful, Talia. You wouldn't want to make a scene at my wedding. What would Daddy think? Don't worry about scenes, Isabella. I'm more interested in presentations. Something flickers in her eyes. Uncertainty, maybe fear. But before she can respond, the DJ announces it's time for the father-daughter dance. I watch Reed lead Isabella onto the dance floor. As Butterfly Kisses plays, they spin slowly, and for a moment, I see what Reed sees. His little girl, his princess. Then I remember the security footage of her sneaking into my office. The forged signatures, the lies. Melina appears at my elbow. Ready? Almost. I scan the room. Where's Thomas? By the bar with his parents. They're still gushing about your incredible generosity. The dance ends to applause. Isabella curtsies dramatically, blowing kisses to the crowd. Reed makes his way back to me, his expression troubled. What's wrong? I ask. She just told me she's already spent the money for next month's boutique inventory on the honeymoon. I stare at him. And, you're right, this has to stop. I signal to Noah, who heads for the DJ booth with the USB drive. Isabella's at the head table now, whispering with Thomas, probably feeding him more lies. Ladies and gentlemen, the DJ announces, before dinner is served, we have a special presentation prepared by the family. Isabella's head snaps up. This isn't on her meticulously planned schedule. The lights dim. The giant screen behind the head table flickers to life. Isabella's own voice fills the ballroom. Of course Talia doesn't know. She's such an idiot. I've been forging her signature for months. The security footage plays next, showing her breaking into my office. Then the bank statements appear, highlighted transactions scrolling past as Isabella's emails to vendors flash on screen. The ballroom is dead silent, except for gasps and murmurs. Thomas's mother stands up, her face white with shock. Skylar covers her mouth with her hand. And Isabella, she's frozen in her seat, watching her carefully constructed world crumble on the giant screen before her. The lights come up, all eyes turn to the head table. Thomas slowly pushes his chair back, standing up. Isabella, his voice cracks. What is this? She opens her mouth, but for once, Isabella McCormick has nothing to say. The silence lasts exactly 3 seconds before Isabella finds her voice. It's all lies, she shrieks, jumping to her feet. Talia doctored those videos. She's trying to ruin my wedding because she's jealous. Jealous? I stand up slowly. Let's talk about the truth, Isabella. Show everyone your phone. Show them the banking app you used to transfer my money. Thomas turns to his new wife, his face ashen. Did you steal the money for our wedding? Of course not, baby. Isabella grabs his arm. Daddy, tell them I had permission. Reed steps forward, and for a moment, I think he might cave again. But he shakes his head. No more lies, Isabella. We found your hidden account. We have the proof. Mrs. Francis, Thomas's mother, stands up, her voice shaking. You told us Talia insisted on paying for everything. You said it was her wedding gift. That's right. Isabella's mascara starts to run. She promised, and now she's trying to humiliate me. Noah clicks to the next slide. Isabella's email to Harold appears. Don't worry about telling Thomas where the money's coming from. His family is too middle class to understand how things work in our world anyway. Thomas jerks away from Isabella like he's been burned. Middle class? Is that what you think of my family? No, Thomas, please. She reaches for him, but he backs away. Skylar stands up from the bridesmaids' table. You told me Talia was handling all the payments. You made me lie to vendors. The room erupts in chaos. Guests start whispering. Phones come out, and Isabella's perfect wedding dissolves into a social media nightmare in real time. I can explain everything, Isabella screams over the growing noise. This is all a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I walk toward the head table, pulling out my phone. Should we call the police? Let them decide if fraud and theft are just misunderstandings. You wouldn't dare, but her voice wavers. Try me. Thomas's father, a respected judge, rises from his seat. I believe we've heard enough. Thomas, come with us. We need to discuss annulment options. Annulment? Isabella's voice rises to a shriek. No, Thomas, don't listen to them. I love you. Love me? Thomas laughs bitterly. You love my family's connections. That's what this was all about, wasn't it? Social climbing. That's not true. But Isabella's eyes dart around the room, calculating, still looking for an escape route. Melina steps forward. Should we show them the texts about Thomas's unfortunate background and how you plan to fix his family's image once you were married? Isabella lunges for her phone, but she's too late. The next slide is already playing. Screenshots of her messages to Skylar. Once I'm married, I'll have access to his trust fund. Then I can finally ditch these new money pretenders and live like I deserve. Thomas turns away, his shoulders shaking. His mother wraps an arm around him and leads him toward the exit. Half the guests follow, leaving their untouched dinner plates behind. Daddy! Isabella runs to Reed. Do something. She's destroying everything. Reed looks at his daughter, really looks at her, maybe for the first time. No, Isabella, you destroyed everything yourself. She spins around, mascara streaking down her face, and points at me. This is your fault. You'll pay for this. I'll sue you for defamation. With what evidence? Noah asks calmly. The truth is its own defense. Isabella grabs her champagne glass and hurls it at the screen. It shatters against her own frozen image, the one from the security footage showing her forging my signature. I hate you, she screams at me. I hate all of you. She runs for the exit, but stops dead when she sees the crowd of guests outside, phones raised, capturing her meltdown for posterity. Isabella, I call after her, the boutique's keys, now. Her hand shakes as she digs through her wedding purse and throws the keys at my feet. Then she pushes through the crowd and disappears into the night. The remaining guests stand in stunned silence. Harold, the wedding planner, looks like he might faint. Skylar is crying quietly in a corner. Reed touches my arm. I'm so sorry, he whispers. I should have seen it sooner. Yes, I agree. You should have. Penny appears with my coat. Want to get out of here? I look around at the expensive decorations, the untouched food, the evidence of Isabella's theft still projected on the wall, all of it paid for with my money, my hard work. Not yet, I say, turning to face the shocked crowd. I think it's time for my own announcement, because while Isabella was busy planning her fraudulent fairy tale, I've been planning something else entirely. something that will ensure she never gets her hands on my business again. I step up to the microphone, and the room falls silent once more. I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight. I begin, my voice steady, despite the chaos of the last few minutes. While this evening hasn't gone as planned, I have an announcement of my own to make. The remaining guests turn to face me. Phones still recording. Perfect. For 15 years, my boutique has been more than just a business. It's been my dream. A dream that someone tried to destroy for their own selfish gains. I pause, letting that sink in. But sometimes, when people try to break you, they only make you stronger. Noah gives me a thumbs up from the back of the room. Reed stands frozen, watching me intently. I'm pleased to announce that next month, my boutique will be launching an exclusive partnership with the International Women's Artisan Collective. We'll be featuring handcrafted pieces from female entrepreneurs across the globe, with a portion of all proceeds going to support women-owned businesses in developing countries. Melina starts clapping, and others join in. I hold up my hand. But that's not all. Thanks to some recent events, I've realized the importance of protecting what you've built. So tonight, I'm also announcing the creation of the Phoenix Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping women rebuild their businesses after financial fraud or theft. The doors burst open. Isabella storms back in, her wedding dress muddy at the hem. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" "Security," Harold calls weakly, but Isabella's already marching toward me. "You want to talk about fraud?" she snarls, grabbing the microphone. "Let me tell you all what kind of woman Talia really is. She married my father for his money. That's enough." Reed's voice cuts through the room like a whip. "Isabella, stop embarrassing yourself." "Embarrassing myself?" She laughs hysterically. "Daddy, she just destroyed my wedding, my life." "No," Thomas says from the doorway. He's come back in. "You destroyed your own life, and you tried to destroy mine too." Isabella spins toward him. "Baby, please, don't." He holds up his hand. "The police are outside. They'd like to talk to you about the fraud charges." The color drains from Isabella's face. "Police? But Daddy won't press charges. Will you, Daddy?" "The charges aren't coming from Reed," I say quietly. "They're coming from me, and from Thomas's parents, who wrote you quite a few checks based on your lies." Two police officers enter the ballroom. Isabella backs away from them, looking wildly around the room. "This isn't fair. None of this is fair. You deserve consequences," I interrupt, "for once in your life." The officers approach Isabella. One of them starts reading her rights. She struggles as they take her arms, her designer dress ripping at the shoulder. "I'll get out," she shrieks, as they lead her away. "And when I do, you'll be sorry, all of you." The doors close behind them, muffling her threats. The remaining guests stand in shocked silence. "Well," Penny says brightly, "who wants champagne?" A nervous laugh ripples through the crowd. The string quartet, who've been frozen in place this whole time, tentatively begins to play again. Thomas approaches me slowly. "I had no idea," he says, "about any of it. I'm so sorry." "It's not your fault," I tell him. "She fooled a lot of people." He nods, then turns to Reed. "Sir, I don't even know what to say." Reed puts a hand on his shoulder. "Go be with your family, son. We'll sort everything out later." As Thomas leaves, Reed turns to me. "The Phoenix Foundation. When did you plan all this?" "While your daughter was planning her wedding," I reply. I had to do something productive with my anger. Ms. Carter, a reporter from the local paper, approaches, notebook in hand. "Could we get a statement about tonight's events?" I smile. "Of course. But first, let me tell you about the amazing women artisans I'll be working with." Hours later, after the last guests have gone and the staff is cleaning up, I sit at an empty table with Reed, Penny, Noah, and Melina. "Well," Penny raises her glass, "that was one hell of a wedding." "To karma," Melina adds. "To new beginnings," Noah suggests. Reed takes my hand under the table. "Talia, I know I should have listened sooner. I just never wanted to believe." "I know," I squeeze his hand. The question is, what happens now? Now, he looks around at the half-dismantled wedding decorations. Now we rebuild. Together, if you'll let me. My phone buzzes, a news alert. Isabella's arrest is already making headlines. Below, it is another alert. My boutique's website is crashing from too much traffic. I raise my glass. To rebuilding then, and to karma. We clink glasses as the last wedding flowers are cleared away, making room for whatever comes next. 3 weeks after the wedding that wasn't, I'm standing in my newly renovated boutique, surrounded by colorful hand-woven textiles and artisanal jewelry from around the world. The grand reopening is in full swing, and the place is packed. Another reporter wants to talk to you. Penny calls from near the entrance. This one's from Forbes. Send her back, I say, adjusting a display of hand-beaded bags from a women's cooperative in Guatemala. The reporter, a sharp-looking woman named Claire, doesn't waste time with pleasantries. Your story has captured national attention. How does it feel to turn a personal crisis into a movement? Before I can answer, the boutique's door chimes. Thomas walks in, looking much better than the last time I saw him. Excuse me, I tell Claire. We can continue this in a moment. Thomas meets me halfway across the store. I wanted to stop by before I leave town, he says. I got a job offer in Seattle. Fresh start, you know? How are you holding up? He manages a small smile. Better. The annulment went through yesterday. My parents wanted me to thank you again for testifying. Thomas, Reed emerges from my office, where he's been handling calls all morning. I didn't know you were coming by. Just saying goodbye, sir. Thomas straightens his shoulders. And returning this, he pulls out a check. It's everything my parents gave her for the wedding. We sold the gifts and liquidated the honeymoon reservations. Reed takes the check, then pulls Thomas into a surprise hug. Take care of yourself, son. You deserve better. After Thomas leaves, Melina rushes over. You need to see this, she says, holding up her phone. It's a social media post from Skylar, a photo of Isabella entering a courthouse, with the caption, "Karma comes for us all. I'm sorry I ever helped her lie." Speaking of karma, Noah joins us, tablet in hand. The DA just called. Isabella's taking a plea deal. She'll have to pay restitution and serve 6 months, plus probation. Only 6 months? Penny frowns. Plus community service, Reed adds quietly. At a women's shelter. The irony isn't lost on any of us. Claire, the reporter, clears her throat. Mr. McCormick, how do you feel about your daughter's sentencing? Reed looks at me, then back at the reporter. I feel like it's exactly what she needs. Sometimes love means letting people face the consequences of their actions. The boutique's door chimes again. This time it's a group of women from the International Artisan Collective, their arms full of new samples. Talia, Maria, their coordinator, hugs me warmly. The first shipment sold out in 2 days. We need to double the next order. Triple it, I say, leading them to the display area. And wait until you see where we're putting your pieces in the new store layout. New store? Claire perks up. You're expanding. 3 new locations, Noah confirms, all featuring work from women entrepreneurs worldwide. The Phoenix Foundation will provide microloans and mentorship programs. And security systems, Penny adds with a wink, really good ones. The afternoon flies by in a blur of interviews, sales, and celebrations. As the sun sets, I find myself in my office with Reed, looking at the framed article on my wall, From Fraud Victim to Philanthropist, How One Woman Turned Betrayal into Triumph. I got a letter from Isabella today, Reed says softly. She asked me not to show it to you. What did it say? That she's sorry, that she wants to make things right. He sighs. That she needs help. Do you believe her? I don't know, but I do know this. You showed her something she's never seen before. What's that? That actions have consequences, and that real strength isn't about taking what you want. It's about building something that matters. A knock at the door interrupts us. It's Maria with the International Artisan Collective. Talia, we have something to show you, she says excitedly. The women in our Guatemala cooperative named their newest design after you. They're calling it the Phoenix Collection. She holds up a stunning handbag, hand-woven in vibrant reds and golds. The tag reads, "Rising from ashes, we soar together." It's perfect, I whisper, touching the intricate pattern. Reed wraps an arm around my waist, just like its namesake. Through the office window, I can see the boutique full of customers, reporters, and artisans. Penny's showing Claire the new collection. Noah's explaining the foundation's mission to a group of interested investors. Melina's helping a young entrepreneur fill out a loan application. This, I realize, is what victory really looks like. Not revenge, but renewal. Not destruction, but creation. Ready to go back out there? Reed asks. I pick up the Phoenix bag. More than ready. We've got work to do. The women's correctional facility looks exactly like I imagined. Stark and institutional. I follow the guard down a long hallway, my heels clicking against the linoleum floor. She's not expecting you, the guard says, stopping at a metal door. Are you sure about this? I nod. After all these months, it's time. Isabella sits at a metal table in the visitation room, wearing a beige jumpsuit that's a far cry from her designer wardrobe. She looks up as I enter, and for a moment, I see genuine shock on her face. "What are you doing here?" she asks, her voice hoarse. I place a folder on the table between us. "I brought you something." She doesn't touch it. "If this is about more charges." "It's an application," I interrupt. "For the Phoenix Foundation's rehabilitation program, for when you get out." Isabella stares at me like I've grown a second head. Is this some kind of joke? No joke. I slide the folder closer. The foundation helps women rebuild their lives after financial mistakes, even deliberate ones. Why would you help me? Her eyes narrow. After everything? Because revenge wasn't the point, Isabella. Change was. She opens the folder, slowly, like it might bite her. I don't understand. Your father showed me your letters. All of them, including the ones where you talked about wanting to start your own business someday. Those were private, she whispers. They were honest. Maybe the first honest things you've written in years. She looks down at the application, then back at me. Does Daddy know you're here? Reed knows. So does Thomas. At Thomas's name, she flinches. How is he? Happy. His tech startup in Seattle is doing well. Isabella's fingers trace the foundation's logo on the application. A phoenix rising from flames. I really messed up, didn't I? Yes, you did. I lean forward. But you can either let that define you, or you can use it to change. Why should I trust you? But there's less venom in her voice now, more uncertainty. Because I'm offering you something no one else has. A chance to earn your way back. Not with lies or manipulation, but with actual work. She's quiet for a long moment, reading through the application. It says here participants have to do community service at women's shelters and financial literacy programs, teaching others what you learned the hard way. And if I complete the program, then you'll have the skills and support to start your own legitimate business. But you'll have to build it yourself, brick by brick, no shortcuts. Isabella wipes at her eyes with the heel of her hand. I don't deserve this chance. Maybe not, but you're getting it anyway. The question is, what will you do with it? She picks up the pen I brought, then hesitates. What about everyone else? The people I hurt? That's part of the program too. Making amends takes time. She starts filling out the application, her handwriting shaky but determined. I'm sorry, she says suddenly, not looking up. For everything. I know. When she finishes, I take the application and stand. Someone from the foundation will be in touch about next steps. Talia, she calls as I reach the door. Thank you for not giving up on me completely. Don't thank me yet. The hard part's still coming. Outside the prison, Reed is waiting in the car. How did it go? I show him the completed application. She's ready to try. And you're ready to let her? The foundation isn't about holding grudges. It's about building bridges. I buckle my seatbelt, even the scary ones. Reed starts the car. You're a better person than most. No, I correct him. I just finally understand the difference between justice and vengeance. My phone buzzes with a text from Penny. New artisan collection just arrived. Wait till you see what they've created. Another message pops up. This one from Noah. 5th location's paperwork is ready. You're officially going national, sis. I smile, thinking about the journey from that first confrontation in my boutique to now, about how sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best changes we make. Ready to head back to the shop? Reed asks. Actually, I pull up the foundation's website on my phone, where Isabella's story is already being added to our testimonials. I think I'm ready for whatever comes next, because that's the thing about rising from ashes. You never know how high you might soar, or who might end up rising with you. The guard waves us through the prison gates, and I don't look back. There's too much ahead to keep watching what's behind.